So, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone, for this second high-level political day of the Copenhagen Infrastructure Forum. It's a pleasure to welcome you. It's the 12th time we are having the Copenhagen Infrastructure Forum. We have changed the setting, but I think this room is also very good, very well-centered and very nice. So again, many thanks to our hosts, the Danish Ministry for Energy and Climate. And we will start right now. We are still expecting the commissioner in a few minutes, but I think we should start. So, you know the context of the geopolitical tensions we have, which are of course also visible in the energy sector. You have had some discussions, more concrete discussions yesterday, but of course the whole debate about security of supply, affordability, and continued sustainability and decarbonization are our driving mottos. We came out with what we call Accelerate EU. So the main objective is continue and accelerate the energy transition with all the homegrown energy, clean energy we have, and reduce our dependency from imports and in particular fossil fuel imports. In order to accelerate, it's clear one thing, we need infrastructure. The infrastructure is the backbone of our energy sovereignty. Without strong networks, we cannot continue the clean transition, and we would undermine what we want to do, affordability, competitiveness, and we would more prolong our dependency instead of reducing it. Yesterday, you heard a lot about challenges and also potential solutions which are faced by financing the infrastructure, the question of cost sharing, hydrogen infrastructure, de-risking, and as well as the timely and efficient grid connection. Today, we will continue the debate, of course, and we will also look at further engagement with all of you, with member states, regulatory authorities, system operators, all stakeholders, but also the private sector to reach our shared goals. We will have concrete follow-up steps which were already proposed and discussed yesterday and also will be discussed today, and they will be then published on our website. So today we will start in a moment with some high-level speeches. And then we will also have some nice surprises, some 3 projects which merit particular attention. We will also launch the Capacitypedia platform, providing a single information point for network users to check available grid hosting capacity. And we will have a high-level panel where we will discuss public acceptance and affordability. How can it go hand in hand? So a full morning. And I'm very pleased that we can start with our first speaker. As I already mentioned, we are very, very happy with our cooperation and the host of today's conference, the Danish Ministry for Climate, Energy and Utilities. And I'm very happy that we have Deputy Permanent Secretary Christian Stenberg with us. So Christian, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mechthild. Dear guests, dear Commissioner Jørgensen, who will arrive shortly, dear Commission and Commission staff, Member of the European Parliament, Niels Fuglsang, Secretary Giordano, and to all of you, a very warm welcome to Copenhagen. It's a great honor for us to be hosting this event for the 12th year. Hope you had some very good conversations yesterday and that they will continue today. As you will have noted, I'm not the minister. The minister is currently very busy on our government formation, which is taking a historically long time. It's more than 2 months now, but I think we are coming to crunch time, and hopefully we will soon have a fully functioning government, because one of the first key tasks for that government is to figure out how we accelerate the build-out of energy infrastructure in Denmark. The Energy Infrastructure Forum was set up to remove barriers in the European energy market, because when the energy flows freely, our societies benefit. This hasn't changed, it's still the main purpose. When barriers remain or rise, the consequences hit all across the society. And this is my 8th Infrastructure Forum, and I think every year we say, this year energy infrastructure is even more important than it was last year. And this year I will say exactly the same thing. Energy infrastructure has never been more important, because it's true. It does. And the current situation in the Middle East makes this more clear than ever. The impact is felt immediately in petrol and diesel prices, heating and electricity bills for households and businesses. But it's also felt in the long term. High energy prices hurt the economy as a whole. We don't know when this conflict will come to an end, but we know that unless we make changes to our energy sector, we are just waiting for the next crisis to arrive. As long as we are heavily dependent on energy imports, especially fossil fuels from third countries, our safety and resilience will be under pressure. The Energy Infrastructure Forum is a chance to find a path forward out of this vicious cycle. It's a chance to have a substantial conversations about the steps we need to take, a conversation that goes deeper than the headlines. Because none of the solutions are as simple as they sound. Otherwise, we wouldn't be meeting for the 12th time. They require deep knowledge about technology, innovative solution, regulations, and finance at a scale we've never seen before. And you all know this, you are experts, and you are here to find these solutions together, so thank you very much for coming. It's clear to us all that Europe needs to be more independent in terms of energy, and independence goes beyond energy production. It requires more efficient use of our existing grids, it requires expansion of our grids, it requires better cooperation and interconnections across borders. Do-it-yourself solutions where countries go it alone will lead to sky-high prices, and security of supply will suffer. Instead, we need a do-it-together mindset. And if we look at this globally, I believe this is actually a European competitive edge. We are able to do this, unlike anyone else in the world, and we need to continue to do that. But this mindset doesn't appear magically. We need to insist on showcasing the benefits of a more interconnected energy market. It has to be clear to all that the lack of interconnection contributes to higher electricity prices for Europe as a whole. Of course, showcasing this will look different in different parts of Europe. In Denmark, we are pursuing multiple projects that will strengthen our connection to our neighbors even more. For many years, we have worked together with Germany on Bornholm Energy Island, and in January, we concluded an agreement. The project is a true hybrid. It's a connection of production and transmission, and it's a way of rethinking finance across border projects. We're also making projects on an interconnected hydrogen market. And recently, the European Commission chose to support multiple Danish hydrogen projects that are designed to produce hydrogen for German industry. If we focus solely on solutions inside Denmark, these projects would not be feasible. But because we look across borders, the opportunities are much greater. I see this trend across much of Europe. There are plenty of success stories on cross-border infrastructure in recent years, and we'll hear about many of these today. But there are also clearly challenges and difficulties we need to solve. So the picture is not completely rosy. We have a fair set of challenges in Denmark. As I said, this is one of the very first challenges that the new Danish government will have to face. We are seeing a massive rise in requests for access to the electricity grid, and I know this is a challenge many of you face as well. This raises a difficult question. who goes first? Companies that want to switch to green energy, data centers that can speed up digitalization of our societies and the use of artificial intelligence, or storage projects that can help us deal with fluctuations in our current energy mix. There is no easy answer. Of course, expanding the grid is essential, but it also leaves us with dilemmas. How do we maintain a good balance between nature, communities, and infrastructure? And who should pay for this expansion? If the electricity bills soar, we risk a backlash against the green transition, and then we will not be able to escape the vicious cycle of energy crisis. Therefore, we need innovation in energy infrastructure, and better utilization is just as pressing as it was 11 years ago at the first forum. We need to continue our journey towards a more integrated clean energy market, and we have a very strong foundation to build on. A lot of EU regulation is already in place, and at the moment the grids package is under negotiation. This package will hopefully speed the build-up of our energy infrastructure even more and provide a better framework for energy planning at the EU level. Permitting is also a very important part of this package. A faster build-out of energy infrastructure requires faster and more effective permitting procedures. And finally, in Denmark, we're also very much looking forward to the upcoming electrification strategy from the Commission. Electrification is a necessary step forward in Europe. Setting a clear direction can help the advancement of electrification. But we also, in order to attain that electrification, have to solve these challenges of the grid. Because electrification is absolutely key, the grid are absolutely key, and they're key to strengthening energy security, they're key to phasing out fossil fuels, and key to lowering emissions. Electrification is what will eventually move us towards an efficient, flexible, and affordable energy system. I hope you'll enjoy the remainder of your time here in Copenhagen. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Christian, and it's my pleasure now to ask the Commissioner Dan Jørgensen, Commissioner for Energy and Housing, to take the floor. Please.
Thank you. It's great to be here today. Last night I participated in a public meeting with my former colleague in the Council and former Vice Chancellor Robert Habeck, and we exchanged war stories from those first months of the crisis in 22. And I told him something that he didn't know, but that he wasn't surprised to hear, which was that the first weeks and months even, Christian was in the room so he can testify to this, we spent a lot of time making emergency plans for what we would do if Putin closed the taps. And in Denmark that would have meant that we would have had to force companies to close down their production. And if they hadn't done so, we would have sent people in uniform. This is how exposed we were in Denmark. Now, Robert said, well, that's nothing compared to Germany. Nothing. Because they got the lion's share of their gas from Russia. We got some of our, they got the lion's share. And had that happened, had Putin closed the taps to Germany, the whole of Europe, and thereby maybe even the whole of the world, would have been in a recession. So that was a wake-up call. Never again should we allow ourselves to be so dependent on one country, especially obviously not if that country turns out to be an enemy. But even friends, it's not a good idea to be so dependent on anybody. Now, a lot has happened since 22. We have brought down our consumption of gas, more than 20%, I think it's the newest numbers. It's quite impressive. We've also diversified our suppliers so that we are not dependent, as we were, of one source as much as that is possible for us. Norway is, of course, still our biggest supplier. But still, this situation that we're in now shows us that even though that is, of course, a positive trend and something that we've done as a deliberate strategy, it's not enough to safeguard us when geopolitical shocks like this one hits. Because when the world market prices goes up, with the role of LNG on the energy market globally, it hits us. So it shows us how vulnerable we are, and it shows us that really there is only one way out and one strategy for the future, and that is to become independent of fossils. Because at the end of the day, this is not actually an energy crisis. This is a fossil energy crisis. So we need to deploy more renewables faster. We need to deploy more energy efficiency measures faster. And we need to create an energy union that is working much more rational than the one we have today. In a way, it's a bit of a paradox that the European Union started as a coal and steel community, so basically it was about energy. Now, we have better rules for trading tomatoes and toothpaste than energy. There are some good reasons for that. Obviously, it's the national competency to decide your own energy mix. Probably that's something that will never change. But it should be in everybody's interest, no matter if you want an energy system that's primarily based on nuclear, or one that's primarily based on renewables, or one that has a mix. All countries in this union have an interest in us as a union becoming independent, because our economies are interconnected. All countries also have a very big interest in us being better connected, because if we look at what determines the prices today, there's two determinants that are the primary. One is how large of a penetration of renewables do you have? Second is how well connected are you to your neighbors? Acer has proved and shown this numerous times. So right now we pay 33 billion approximately euros less every year for our energy than we would have done had we been just 27 different energy systems. So already now, even though we think our prices are too high, we actually pay way less than we would have had we not been connected. But the potential is much bigger, at least 10 billion euros a year. Also, the negative potential is there. If we don't expand our grids, when we electrify our economies, when we move away from fossils onto renewables, the transmission is of course key. No transition without transmission, goes without saying. And that is why we've put forward a very ambitious proposal for a new grid plan. There are many elements in it, as I'm sure you know, so I won't go through it in detail, just mention and remind you briefly of the most important points. One is a change of the way we plan. So today everything is bottom up. We will still need data from individual member states and TSOs, so that's fine. But we do need the ability to make a European-wide scenario with recommendations. I sometimes use the analogy that what we're doing today is more or less like building a jigsaw puzzle without looking at the picture on the box, and then hoping that magically we have a nice picture in the end. There is not a central planning going on. That is what we want to do. At the end of the day, it will always be up to the member states whether or not they want to participate in interconnected projects and stuff like that, goes without saying. But if we are to make the most rational system, the incentives and the clarity for decision makers will also be there. The incentives that we put forward is first and foremost the ability to also support it. So Bornholm that Christian spoke about would have obviously not happened without huge funding from CEF Energy. This MFF has allocated just under 6 billion euros in CEF Energy. We propose in the next MFF to increase that 5 times to just under 30 billion euros. So this will make a real difference. Electrification is also at the core of this. We will be putting forward before the summer break an electrification plan, including an electrification target. It's not an easy thing to do because we all agree that we need fast electrification, but how do you actually then set that target? Looking at the statistics, Denmark is actually not doing that well. Some of the reasons are fair and things need to change. But one part of that reason is also that we have a lot of district heating, so a very low degree of electrification in our housing sector. That's not a bad thing, that's a very good thing. We would like other countries to do the same. And the opposite end of the spectrum, we have a country that's doing very well in electrification, Malta. But maybe not for the right reasons, because they have a lot of electricity generated by generators using fossils. So a number is not just a number. We need to make sure what's beneath that number when we set the rules. So input from many of the good people in this room is very, very useful in that aspect also. To connect Europe, to do it fast, to also have decision makers, companies, authorities making decisions for something that will not help us tomorrow, but that will help us in a decade or even 2 decades, needs to be in the center of our actions. So I thank you all for being here today. I know that you're all in your different capacities working hard to make this happen. We would have obviously rather not be in the situation that we're in. It would have been nice not to have a war in Ukraine. It would have been fantastic not to have a one in the Middle East. We would have liked to have better relations across the Atlantic, all of those things. But now that we are in this mess, let's exploit it. Let's use it to make some healthy decisions for our future. And I'm not naive. I know that in many member states there will also be temptations, and we've already seen, unfortunately, also them leading to decisions where subsidies has been given to something that we would not normally recommend subsidizing, for instance, gasoline, diesel. So we need to politically do whatever we can to make sure that whatever subsidies and state aids is given as ways of trying to address this crisis, that they are targeted and that they are temporary. And that if it at all is possible, that they are guided towards things that will also support our more long-term transition. So that is the basic aim of the Commission in our work with the Member States. Thank you.
So many thanks, Commissioner. I would like now to ask the Member of Parliament, Niels Fuglsang, on stage. He's also the rapporteur of the permitting part, and this is hugely important and negotiated right now. Niels, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the European Commission, the Danish Ministry for Climate, Energy and Utilities for organizing this event so that we can push forward energy infrastructure, renewable energy infrastructure and electrification in our society. There's no doubt that we need to do more. Actually, when we talk about electrification and compare ourselves to the USA or China, they're both ahead of us. We have, I believe, 23% of our energy system is electrified in Europe, and that has been pretty stable over the last year. So I think there's a good reason to do more, and I think it's very important, these proposals that are now on the table from Commissioner Jørgensen, the grids package, which means that if we get this adopted, we will be able to have much more renewable electricity that we need. And I think it has been mentioned, this crisis that we are in. We had a very serious crisis just described by the Commissioner in 2022 when Putin started the war in Ukraine. And now we are in a very dire situation with the war in Iran, the conflict in the Middle East. Mr. Trump, he started this war in Iran, and we've seen oil prices skyrocketing well above $100 for a barrel of crude oil now. Mr. Trump we're all suffering from this when we go to the gas station, or when people who heat their homes using oil, they pay that bill. But Mr. Trump is actually in a better position than we are, in the sense that the USA has their own oil and gas. They have a significant production. In contrast, in Europe, 98% of the oil and gas that we consume, we import from other countries, often from powers with values that we don't like, powers with whom we don't share values. That makes us incredibly vulnerable, and we know from the European Commission's analysis that we sending billions of euros out of the European Union right now as we speak, because we spend all this money importing stuff that has just gone way up in price. So there's a good reason to do more, and I think that the grids package being presented by the European Commission is a good step in the right direction. I'm the lead negotiator on the part of the package which is about permitting and speeding up the permitting processes. This may sound like, when I explain, probably not to you guys, but when I explain it in the wider public, it can perhaps sometimes sounds like a small bureaucratic exercise, permitting. But really, the current permitting rules are a critical part of the bottleneck for the build-out of homegrown energy that we need. Because while we import 98% of the oil and gas that we consume, that means that we produce 2% of the oil and gas that we consume. In contrast to that, we produce 100% of the electricity that we consume here in the EU, in the European Union. So if we can electrify more, obviously we will become less vulnerable and less dependent on these foreign powers. And I think the numbers that the European Commission published speak for themselves. It can take up to 9 years to get necessary permits for renewable energy projects in Europe. 9 years. It takes on average 5 years to get permits for electricity transmission grids. 5 years. That's not sustainable. That's not acceptable. I think we would all agree on that. And that's why we need to get serious about looking at how we can speed these things up. I think some of the reasons for these long permitting times are good intentions when it comes to protecting the environment, birds and frogs and other biodiversity. I myself think that is immensely important. But obviously, when we talk about such long time periods for permitting, something is wrong, and we need to look at, do we need all these long assessments for all the reports that we make, or all the projects that we make? Because if we don't get this process speeded up, we won't get the green transition in time. That will hurt biodiversity, that will hurt nature even more. So there are also good reasons from a green perspective, I would say, for doing this. I would point at 3 things in my proposal that we're negotiating right now. I've looked at the Commission's proposal that I, in overall terms, support. I think it's a good proposal. I want to thank Commissioner Jørgensen and the European Commission for putting it on the table. And I think some of the elements that I would highlight here are elements that I support and try to strengthen in my report. First, the use of the overriding public interest principle when we talk about energy projects and grids. When we plan grids, when we plan energy projects, there are obviously many interests at stake. There might be other economic interests from farmers or fishermen or other projects that have economic interest. That there are obviously also environmental interests. And then you have the energy and independency interest. And I think it's a good proposal to say that has to, politics is about saying there are different interests, but something has to weigh heavier than others. And we have to prioritize the energy situation. We have to say that has the overriding public interest when we weigh these different interests. And that's part of the proposal, central part of the proposal. I think we should support that. Second, we need to look at the environmental assessment reports that we make. Do we need to make the same reports for very small projects and big-scale projects, or can we say for some of the smaller, for example, solar projects and grids projects, maybe we don't need the same amount of assessments because they will obviously not have as deep an impact on the environment as the big offshore wind projects, for example. So can we exempt some of these projects? I think we should do that. I think that's part of the proposal. I think we need to support that to get a higher speed on these projects. Also, when we talk about repowering of existing, let's say, wind turbine projects or grid projects, projects that do exist but they need to be repowered or refurbished, do they need to go through the whole process once more? I don't think that should be necessary. If we want to speed up things here, we could also say they don't need to go through the whole process one more time. And I think the third and last thing I will mention in the Commission proposal that I also try to develop in my proposal is the acceptance from the public. Some of the delay is also caused by neighbors, by local communities to say, maybe it's not a good idea to have a wind turbine or a solar project in my backyard. That needs to be taken seriously. And one way we can do it is to make sure that these local communities, they also get a share of the benefits, the profit which is being generated by the energy projects. That's part of the Commission's proposal. I think we should build on that because that will also create a bigger acceptance, and that's also fair, by the way, that those neighbors, they get a share of the benefits. So that would be three elements that I would like to highlight. I think if you look at just final remark here, if you look at the situation in the European Parliament, we just begun the negotiations, and obviously it's a tougher, if you think that climate and green policies are important, it's a tougher environment in the European Parliament today than when I was elected in 2019 and the last mandate when we had the so-called climate election. In 2024, you had a larger representation of right-wing, also extreme right-wing parties, where you could say that climate sustainability is probably not what keeps them awake at night, all of these guys. So I think it's a tougher environment to make the climate case, but I think we might have a chance of getting this through because apart from that it's a good proposal, and Commissioner Jorgensen is a pretty educated guy when it comes to navigating the European Parliament and putting something on the table which might be able to get a majority. I also think that even though you don't care so much, those politicians that, in contrast to me, and I believe also the Commissioner, don't care so much about climate policies, you could say that this is also very much about security and competitiveness. We know from the Draghi report that electricity prices are two to three times higher in the EU compared to the US. If we have more renewable energy and more grids that make us able to share the energy, that will cut the energy prices down, that will help all of us, make us more competitive. And it's obviously about security, that we are so vulnerable, importing 98% of the oil and gas that we consume from other powers. So there are good arguments across the Europe for political parties across the European Parliament for doing this, and I think we should be able to find agreement on this across the political spectrums. Ursula von der Leyen told us to hurry up, and I think that she has a good point because this is urgent, and I think there is a sense of urgency also across the European Parliament. Then we need to speak with the Council, of course, also, but we'll hear more from the Council, I think, later today. Thank you very much, and thank you for the floor.
Thank you very much, Niels, for the Parliament's view. And indeed, last but not least, I'm very happy that we have the Council presidency, the Cyprus EU presidency, here today and to speak and eventually to react to some of the words which has been proposed by the Commissioner or by the Member of Parliament. So I'm very pleased that the Cyprus Permanent Secretary, Mr. Kyriakos Giordanu, is here, and you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Commissioner, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm truly delighted to be in Copenhagen today, and yesterday, of course, for the forum, and to address the 12th Energy Infrastructure Forum on behalf of the Cyprus Presidency of the Council of the European Union. Firstly, I would like to express our sincere appreciation to the European Commission and the Danish Ministry of Climate, Energy and Utilities for hosting this forum and for convening this timely discussion at a particularly critical moment for Europe's energy future amid the current challenges. The theme for our discussion, affordable and socially accepted grid expansion, goes to the heart of Europe's strategic implementation. We meet today at a moment when the imperative of implementation has overtaken the luxury of deliberation. Geopolitical pressures on European energy markets, from instability in the Middle East to persistent volatility in global energy trade, keep reinforcing the central reality. Infrastructure is not merely an enabler of energy transition, it is a foundation of Europe's security, competitiveness, and strategic autonomy. Obviously, electrification and interconnectivity are fundamental commodities now for a thriving Europe. As far as the Cyprus presidency is concerned, this aligns closely to our vision of an autonomous union open to the world, a union that is resilient, competitive, and capable of navigating in an increasingly uncertain environment, acting out of choice rather than necessity. Securing energy supply through interconnections, decarbonizing without deindustrializing, reducing critical dependencies, and simplifying the regulatory framework through the grids package with the objective of delivering substantive progress by June at the next Council meeting. Electricity grids are no longer passive conduits of power. They are active, strategic infrastructure, essential for electrifying industry, transport, and buildings at scale required to meet our climate and competitiveness goals. Yet, the gap between ambition and delivery remains significant. Delays in grid access, fragmented planning across borders, and voltage levels and the underutilization capacity continues to impose real costs on consumer, investors, and the credibility of the transition. For Cyprus, these challenges are not theoretical. As the last energy-isolated member state, coupled by the additional geopolitical constraints we have a clear comprehension of the economic and strategic cost of isolation. This is why the presidency promotes a pragmatic approach, advancing anticipatory grid planning, maximizing existing assets through digitalization and grid-enhancing technologies, and streamlining connection procedures to significantly reduce delays. These are not merely technical adjustments, they are structural preconditions for integrating renewable energy, enabling electrification, and empowering consumers and prosumers to participate actively in the energy system. Cross-border infrastructure remains central to this effort. It enables deeper market integration, strengthens the energy union, and ensures that the benefits of electrification are shared across all member states. For islands and peripheral regions, connectivity is not abstract. It is a solid matter of energy sovereignty and European solidarity. At the same time, grid expansion is central to public confidence. Cyprus presidency has maintained this dimension as a firm priority throughout the negotiations. Infrastructure developed without transparency, engagement, or visible benefits bears high risks of resistance and delay. This is why streamlined permitting, early stakeholder engagement, and a clear link between investment and lower system costs are essential. These are the conditions under which grid expansion becomes both socially accepted and politically sustainable. At the same time, affordability remains a guiding principle throughout our work, especially for households and industry. Infrastructure that reduces exposure to external shocks through interconnection, storage, and stronger domestic supply is in itself a key affordable and security tool. In this context, electricity storage remains the critical missing link. Without sufficient storage, whether these are batteries, pumped hydro, or emerging technologies, renewable energy cannot be fully integrated, nor can grid stability be ensured at scale. This is one of the strong conclusions of the last informal Energy Council in Nicosia. Our presidency has consistently driven forward the removal of administrative barriers to deployment, alongside stronger cross-border coordination aimed at developing a resilient European supply chain for strategic components. Simultaneously, it is important to recognize the continued role of natural gas in ensuring security of supply and system flexibility during the transition. In our current geopolitical context, resilient and adaptable gas infrastructure remains an important stabilizing component of Europe's energy architecture. However, as reflected in Council conclusions, such infrastructure must be compatible with Europe's long-term climate objectives, hydrogen-ready, and aligned with the 2040 decarbonisation pathway. The work of this forum on financing infrastructure, de-risking hydrogen networks, and improving grid access constitutes the practical implementation of Europe's commitments, and it's something that we have witnessed yesterday during the discussions. The Cyprus presidency remains focused on maintaining the legislative and political momentum needed to deliver tangible results. A grids package that is both ambitious and implementable, an NE framework fit for the electrification era, and an energy union that is fully integrated, resilient, and future-proof. We remain fully committed to shaping the policy framework that enables operators, investors, and regulators to deliver the infrastructure Europe needs. That is competitive, clean, and secure. With that, I wish you a very successful forum for today, and looking forward to the rest of the deliberations and the discussions. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Kyriakos, and many thanks also for all the work of the Cyprus presidency team. It's quite a heavy presidency. Of course, the grids package is, I would say, the highlight to get the general approach in June, but there have been many more files as well, so many thanks and good luck with the next 6 weeks or something for the presidency. Now, we have finished the high-level opening session, and we will go a little bit more concrete. We have a ceremony marking the signature of CEF grant agreements, which will finish with a family photo. But before the family photo, I would like to explain a little bit the projects, because I think you know the process, and the Commissioner mentioned our CEF Energy Money, where we highlight and reward projects of cross-border interest or cross-border validity, in different sectors, of course, electricity, hydrogen, smart grids, and a few others. So it's always a pleasure when the next steps comes up and the grant agreements are signed. So, and Cinea will, of course, be on the floor as well as our major agency handling all that process. But I would like to start with the first project of common interest, which is here ready for the certificate. It has a very nice name. It's called Carmen. It reminds me of the opera, but it's a smart electricity project involving Bulgaria and Romania. And I would like to invite the president of the administration board of Delgas Grid, Mr. Volker Raffel, the CEO of ESO, Mr. Kirill Georgiev, and the European Affairs Director of Transelectrica, Ms. Daniela Mocanu. Please come all on stage, and explain a little bit about Carmen, your nice project, and a bit more what's behind it. We have a few minutes to present it to all of us, and then at the end we will take pictures. So please, maybe you need to go there.
Dear Danish hosts, representatives of the Commission, and ladies and gentlemen, dear partners. You mentioned enemies and friends we do not want to depend on, and dear representatives of the Danish Ministry, Stenberg, you mentioned also, if we are alone, we are going to have the highest prices. The way forward is to cooperate, and this is what we want to do. And sometimes you do not only have the impression to build infrastructure, sometimes you have the impression to build the future, and this is what our project Carmen is about. Because energy world is changing. Energy world is not anymore some few hundreds of producers and millions of customers and unidirectional flow of energy. Today it's about thousands, hundred thousands, millions of producers, batteries, whoever else needs to be connected to the grid, and all of them having different behaviors that must somehow be coordinated. And this is what the first Smart Grids project of common interest is about. Of E.ON's Delgas Grid, ESO in Bulgaria and Transelectrica. And there we believe really in the cooperation we are going to have now, and this is the starting point. And for this I really want to thank very much the European Commission for the trust, and now all the success for making it happen. Thank you very much for the attention.
You can stay. Many thanks, and please stay on the stage for now. We have two more interesting projects, quite different, and I would like to invite the Commercial Managing Director at RWE, Sabine Augustin, on stage. This is about the projects of RWE H2 storage expansion in Gronau-Eppe, and I would like you also to explain a little bit to us what this is about. Please take the floor here.
Thank you very much, Mechtel Wörsdorfer. Good morning, everybody. Dear Commissioner Jørgensen, distinguished guest. It's a crazy, crazy world we live in. We've heard it earlier today that Europe needs to become more independent in many ways, and energy is one of that. We've heard that electrification plays an important role in that. I think whenever we say electrification in the future, we also need to think hydrogen, because hydrogen is the perfect partner for wind and sun. It can make sure that we have a stable energy system. And what I love about hydrogen is that we have enough potential for green hydrogen in Europe for Europe. It's not only a green energy, it can make us independent or more independent from foreign supplies. And it has an additional benefit. We can store hydrogen. We can store it in large volumes and for a long time. That's where hydrogen storage comes in, and the project that I would like to present to you. My company, RWE, is one of the pioneers in hydrogen. We're not only building the largest hydrogen production capacity in Europe, we have already almost completed the first hydrogen underground storage, and we're now expanding it for a second phase. Underground storage is virtually a large hole in the ground where we can store large volumes of hydrogen. The expansion project is 155 gigawatt hours of hydrogen storage capacity. And with that, we can make sure that there's always hydrogen there when the market needs it. The project is not only close to Germany's biggest industrial area in the Ruhrgebiet, it is also virtually on the border to the Netherlands and connected to the industrial regions in the Netherlands. So it is also a very important cross-border project. We all know that hydrogen on all steps of the value chain faces a couple of economic challenges. So we are very grateful for the support by the European Commission, by SINEA, that we can really push the second storage project forward. Thank you very much for the support. And I very much like the energy in the room, and I believe together we can really make the green transformation, including secure energy supplies, happen in Europe. Thank you.
Many, many thanks, Sabine and RWE. I have a third project from another region and another focus, and I would like to ask the representatives of Aguayo to deliver some short remarks. And in that sense, I would like to ask the director of the project from Repsol, Elena Agudo. The floor is yours, please.
So, dear Commissioner, distinguished representative of European institutions, esteemed colleagues and partners, ladies and gentlemen. For me, it's a pleasure to be here representing Repsol, and I would like to sincerely thank the European Commission for its support through the CEF program. Receiving these funds, it is not only a recognition of the strategic value of the project, but also a strong signal of Europe's commitment to accelerate the energy transition, something that we've heard already today more than a couple of times, while reinforcing the resilience of the energy system. The Aguayo 2 project, it is a very relevant pump storage development for Spain. It is a large-scale storage project that will have the capability to integrate more than 1.4 gigawatt-hour yearly on our system. But it's also not only this key role integrating energy system, but it has also providing firm capacity that will contribute to system stability. We like to say that it's not only one project, but it's also a broad-based national project, because during the execution phase, we are foreseen to have a lot of industrial capabilities and European capabilities contributing to the project. And these will have a direct impact on the supply chains and the industrial base, which is very much needed right now. At Repsol, we are convinced of the value of the European industry and the need to protect it. There are several sectors with different needs, and there is not a single solution that will fit that. So renewable electrons and renewable molecules will be solutions that can be deployed in a complementary way, supporting European industry and security of supply. So for us, today recognition, it is not only about Aguayo 2 one project, it is about moving together forward, building a stronger and more resilient European electricity system. Thank you very much.
Many thanks also to you. I think we saw three quite different, geographically different, Southeast Europe, more Western Germany, Netherlands, and now Spanish project, and also, of course, different in the project focus. As we heard, CINEA plays a crucial role in the process. We are working hand in hand, and I would like to ask the Head of Department for Sustainable Networks and Investments, Olivier Stella. Please, Olivier, explain to us a little more, and then we will lead from the Commissioner. Please, Olivier.
Thank you, Mechthild. Dear Commissioner, dear members of Parliament, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it has become a very good tradition of the Energy Infrastructure Forum to highlight particularly remarkable projects. And the three projects we have represented on stage today add to a already quite long list of projects that we have supported under CEF. Since 2014, we have supported more than 160 studies. We have supported more than, around 58 works projects, very often very large-scale works projects. And the total EU funding that has gone to this project is close, a bit more than 8 billion euro already. This year, for the first time, we have new kind of projects. We have, you've heard, we have storage projects. We have hydro pump storage projects. We have a hydrogen storage project. This is the first time that we support them for works. We hope to see more of them. And of course, we continue supporting our smart grids. Our speakers have already highlighted the benefits of these projects in terms of making our grids smarter, more efficient, more resilient, and being able to integrate more renewable energy. These are exemplary projects that, of course, will shape our energy system. But we want more of them. And of course, I must recall that we have a call for proposal that is currently open. It opened in April. It will close by the end of September. There is money, there are opportunities. So of course, take your chance to be on stage next year at the Infrastructure Forum. We want more of these projects. We at CINEA, of course, our role is to stand alongside our beneficiaries throughout the life cycle of the project, to help them with the implementation. We help them to comply with our EU funding requirements. We provide advice on the best way forward in case difficulties arise, which of course for large infrastructure projects is not uncommon. And of course, we also celebrate with our beneficiaries. And in that sense, I'm very happy today to hand over the certificates, symbolic certificates, to highlight the grants that the project have received. So I'll start with the Carmen project. Go this way. Hydrogen project.
Thank you.
Many thanks, Olivier, and to you and all your team also for the hard work. I would like to give the final word to the Commissioner, Dan Jørgensen, to say a few things, and then we will proceed with a photo all together. Please, Commissioner.
Yes, well, I'll be extremely brief. I just want to congratulate you all. It goes without saying that these are good projects, otherwise you wouldn't have been awarded the funding. But really, these are projects that will benefit the citizens of the countries that you operate in, but they're also good for the European Union as a whole. And they are perfect examples of why it is that we have proposed to increase the funding to Connecting Europe Facility energy. So basically, make it work, make us proud. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Photo, yeah?
Yeah. Can I ask the three speakers from this morning also
Yes,
to
please.
come to the photo? No, go ahead. Don't know how they manage, but So, many thanks for all the projects, but it's also symbolic for many more, as Olivier said, projects. And I would encourage everyone here, but also to spread the news. There is more money. There's an ongoing call until September, from April to September. There's money and there are good ideas, and please spread the news and come with good projects, so you might be on the stage next year and we can happily support you there. Now I would like to come to our next agenda point, which is something we have been looking forward since some time, and I think it also involves a lot of efforts from the different entities. So this is about transparency, transparency on where and when grid users can connect to the electricity grids. As we heard, this is absolutely crucial. We have more and more demand from data centers and electric cars and many others to get that grid connection. And also, especially now, when grid capacity is scarce and there are these connection queues in more than half of the EU countries. And that we have already acknowledged altogether when we discussed the electricity market design reform, but also under the Grids Action Plan, which in a way preceded what we then proposed in the Grids package. And then in the Grids Action Plan, we mandated the key organization, NGOs, for the TSOs and electricity, and the EU DSO entity to create a single European information access point for available grid hosting capacities. So it's really very much on the cooperation between TSOs and DSOs. I'm very honored that today we have the result. It's called Capacitypedia, not Wikipedia, Capacitypedia platform, which will be now launched today and is presented by both entities, the DSO entity and NGOs. And I think the idea here is that this new platform builds on existing national portals and also wants even further more collaboration, innovation, and exchange of best practice to ensure that our grids can be used efficiently, so the existing one, and also that we contribute to timely grid access. The development and the discussion was accompanied with strong stakeholders' engagement that ensured that the most needed functionalities were included. So it's, as you can see, it's also a quite inclusive but also necessary input for many stakeholders to get it right. Before giving the floor to both the EU DSO entity and also NGOs, I want to thank and congratulate all those involved in the creation of the platform, as well as my dear DG ENER colleagues and all the stakeholders who had been there. So I would like the two entities, both NGOs and EU DSO entity, to come here and say a few words about that Capacitypedia platform which you created. Many thanks.
Good morning, everybody. Also, a warm welcome from my side. My name is Anthony Zegers. I'm from NGOs, and we'll do this presentation together with my colleague from DSO entity, Carlos Castel. Well, after this introduction, there is hardly anything for me to add with the risk of repeating what has been said before. You can, yeah, no, go to the first slide, please. Thank you. Yes, indeed. So what is shown today is a follow-up from the Grid Action Plan action number 6 on the development of a pan-European overview of hosting capacity information. It is a collaborative effort of DSO entity and NGOs, and what we developed is exactly this, an information hub, an information portal that offers users easy navigation to grid hosting capacity information as it is published on the different national pages. On top of this, we complemented with information that guides the reader to interpret the information that is made available in an easy way. Often definitions are a bit used differently. It helps the reader if we had some complementary information, which we did. And obviously the attempt is also to share the information from different countries in one platform, allowing system operators to also get inspired by good practices from other system operators on how to present information, how to update information, and so on. So without further ado, you're kindly invited to navigate to the website, either through the link capacitypedia.eu or using the QR code. And yeah, it's prime time today, so you're the first to hear, see, read about it. And if everything works well, I can offer you a short demo. It's always exciting. Yes, so I mean, you will see on your screens a bit of a different layout, but in the end, the Capacitypedia is built around this graphical representation, allowing navigation through different countries. You will obviously see the different coloring of the different countries. The ones in purple, they offer all information from TSO and DSO level. Others have still some information missing, so having only DSO information or TSO information available. The ones in gray are still a bit behind, meaning they either have the information already available, but it's not yet in a way structured in a way that it can be integrated in Capacitypedia, or they don't have the information available at all. But we're working on a high pace together with all stakeholders to expand this map and to include the information that is still missing, of course. So since we are in Denmark, it would be interesting to navigate to this country. So clicking on the country allows you to move to the so-called country page, which for each country starts with an introduction, giving some background information for the users, mainly sharing some info on what exactly is presented, where it can be found, how it can be interpreted, and then a few links lead us to the information provided by either the TSOs or the DSOs. The way this information is structured is harmonized for all countries, so it's the same information that is being shown on Capacitypedia. There's some general information on the regional scope, obviously, the granularity on which the hosting capacity information is shown, being it geographical, nodal, and so on. Information about the update frequency of the information, so very basic parameters. Then we added a section also for all countries on the way hosting capacity is being assessed in the different countries for the user to understand that different countries might have different practices. Information should be interpreted accordingly. It also has main assumptions behind it, information about whether or not flexible connection agreements are available, and so on. And then the country information closes with complementary information on how connection requests are handled and any additional links or further material that can help the user. Now, in the case of Denmark, it's very interesting because they have one capacity map which combines the information of TSOs and DSOs all in one space. So it's very interesting to have a look at. I would say I will leave it at that. That's the main information. There is the possibility to contact us in case you would have feedback or any remarks. And we obviously, as I said, we continue the work. We continue also the engagement with the other stakeholders, with the European Commission, providing updates on the status of this work. Yeah. We can move back to the slides and then Carlos. Yes, sure.
Okay. Thank you, Anthony. Now, let me briefly walk you through some of the key principles that have already been introduced by Anthony and the host behind Capacitypedia, and then I will also provide you a short update on the Distribution Network Development Plans platform. So first, we see growing momentum publishing hosting capacity information across Europe. So today, Capacitypedia, from the DSO part, covers 25 DSOs across 19 member states, which networks connect already 50% of all European electricity connections. At the same time, well, we also expect this number to grow quickly in the near future. At the same time, as illustrated by Anthony, the hosting capacity information is operator and country specific. Therefore, it is owned, the information you see here, is owned by system operators, which also ensures its validity and it actually helps with the practical operations. Considering that, you can easily see the objective of this platform, which is to provide a structured context to facilitate its understanding across Europe. But more importantly, this initiative has been developed, as also mentioned, in collaboration with 20 stakeholder associations in 3 dedicated workshops. Together with the platform, this creates a strong base for dialogue, enhancing coordination, predictability, and informed investment decisions across the value chain. And now, before moving to the next topic, we also invite you, the participants, to contribute through the Slido, and basically we will ask you where do you see that Capacitypedia brings the most value. Oh, yeah. So maybe you can jump to move to the slide.
This is the correct QR.
Yeah. So I think we clearly have a winning. So it's improving the accessibility of hosting capacity information across Europe. So now, if you also allow me, if we go to the next slide, yeah. Because as some of you might remember, this topic was already introduced yesterday by my colleague Martin, but we had some technical issues and the slide could not be displayed at the time. So I would just like to take a bit of your time to briefly give you an overview today. So this platform provides the European level visibility on distribution network development plans and provides also the first insights into equipment needs. So in this first version, the platform covers 40 DSOs across 18 member states and has also 7 references related to equipment needs. Unlike the Capacitypedia, On this one, we are also working to make these numbers grow in the near future. Now, about distribution network development plans, DSOs are increasingly shaped by hundreds of thousands of customer-driven interventions each year. So this creates a highly decentralized and dynamic planning environment. As a result, DSOs increasingly rely on a scenario-based and systematic planning approaches to anticipate future network needs. Therefore, these distribution network development plans are a strategic instrument to reflect grid development needs under different assumptions and scenarios. And like Capacitypedia, most importantly, this platform also helps strengthening the dialogue across the ecosystem, including system operators, regulators, policymakers, suppliers, and the broader supply chain. So thank you very much for your attention.
Many thanks for the presentations. I think we all know there's a lot of work behind, but it can only increase collaboration between DSOs and TSOs, and as you said, between the different stakeholders. So very well done. Also, thank you to all the colleagues involved. We are very good. We have a bit of an advance, and that allows us to have a small break. We have coffee outside if you need to do a bit of a chat and discussion, but the only thing I ask you to be back at 11 sharp. So we have 15 minutes, because at 11 sharp we will start our high-level discussion panel on affordability, public acceptance together. So I invite you to take a short break and be back at 11. Thank you very much. Thank you. All running well, ahead of time.
Just I'm able to take this camera and shoot.
Well,
Let's slowly start again. Let's slowly start again. Take over.
Wie bei den Griechen mit dem Stock dann so Talk und dann Order.
Let us please start again. Joachim. Thank you. So, thank you very much for coming back. I think I saw a lot of good discussions around coffee, but now it's time, and it's my pleasure to welcome 7 speakers, a distinguished panel, to the high-level session of the forum. The goal of this session is about, on one side, how to advance electricity grid expansion while ensuring public acceptance. And I think we all know how hard it is still to get public acceptance for transmission or for distribution lines. So we will look in the panel on this question of public acceptance from 2 angles. First, as regards the impacts of grid investments on network costs, so it's all about affordability and electricity prices. And the second aspect is about acceptance of the physical infrastructure build-out. So I will encourage and invite all the speakers in a minute, and I think we should really concentrate on that aspects: affordability, deployment of grids, and public acceptance. I think this is about the implementation, what's in the grids package. We all know we are still, or co-legislators are still negotiating the legal text, but that doesn't prevent us, of course, and we should continue the expansion of grids and also the implementation. So, to set the scene, I would like to invite first the Head of Electricity Systems and Markets Division, Maria Cecilia, from the IEA, from the International Energy Agency. It's my pleasure to invite you here. There? No, I can sit down. I was supposed to sit down here, so please. I should invite all speakers, so sorry for that. I would invite also from Acer, Rafael Moraes Garcia. Rafael, please come on stage. I would like to invite Antonella Battalini from RGI. Please, Antonella, come on stage. I would also like to invite Claire Colleran-Molly from the Clare County Council, please. And Hans Grünfeld from IFIEC. Yeah, we just met. And then from NGOs, Patricia Labra, please take the floor. Peter Vermaat from EU DSO. And then I think we are complete. We have a good balance and a good high-level competent panel. So now, again, to start and the scene setter, I would like to invite Maria, the Head of Electricity System from IEA.
Thank you very much, Mertil, and thank you for the invitation to the IEA to speak at this important forum in a particularly important time, as authorities mentioned earlier this morning. Electricity systems indeed face today a dual challenge, enabling rapid electrification while keeping system costs affordable. And my presentation today looks at the global outlook for electricity demand and electrification, as well as its implications on infrastructure development and on affordability. So, in all IEA scenarios, in every World Energy Outlook scenario, electricity is the fastest growing fuel for decades to come. This is what we call the age of electricity. And as the age of electricity gathers momentum, what we see in our medium-term forecast is that electricity is set to grow at a very strong pace, about 3.6% per year on average between 2026 and 2030, compared to the 2.8% of the past decade. This growth will be driven by new drivers, expanding industries, increasing numbers of electric vehicles, more air conditioning, and rapid growth in data centers, together with traditional drivers. But for the first time in 3 decades, global electricity demand outpaced GDP growth. This is a trend that we first observed in 2024 and also was confirmed last year, 2025, excluding, of course, rebounds following crisis-related events. And we think this is the trend that is going to define our forecast period up to 2030. So as the transition towards an electricity-based economy accelerates, electricity consumption is expected to grow at least 2.5 times as fast as overall energy demand, therefore leading to increasing share in final energy mix. What is important to note as well is that demand is growing not just in developing and emerging economies, but for reversing the trend of the past decade, also advanced economies, including the European Union and the United States, are set to return to electricity demand growth in coming years, reversing the stagnation of the past decade. And in 2030, these economies are forecast to contribute about 20% of global demand growth. On the other hand, India and Southeast Asia are rapidly becoming new engines of overall energy demand, but for electricity specifically, China, in absolute terms, remains the largest source of growth to 2030, contributing nearly half of the global increase due to its much larger market size. We expect electricity demand to grow faster over the next 5 years compared to the past decade across all major economies, except China, where we see a slower demand growth. The European Union, in particular, is forecast to see its electricity demand growth at an average annual rate of 2.3% out to 2030. While this may appear high, it comes after consecutive substantial declines in 2022 and 2023 due to the price crisis, which were only followed by moderate recovery in 2024 and 2025. Hence, in our forecast, EU electricity demand is not expected to go back to 2021 levels before 2028. The main drivers of electricity demand differ across major economies. China's electricity demand growth is led by light industries, mainly, while in the United States, demand centers are expected to make up to 50% of new demand. In the European Union, the transport sector dominates growth, driven by the acceleration of electric vehicle adoption, and this is a trend that we expect at the IEA to be reinforced in the current context, mainly also in Asian countries, where the uptake of electric vehicles, although is not yet reflected in the official data, we will publish an update in the month of July with more reflective of the current situation data on electric vehicles. In other parts of the world, in India in particular, buildings, cooling needs are the largest drivers of growth. The electrification of the Chinese economy, defined as the share of electricity in total final consumption, has outpaced that of any other major economy, particularly over the last 15 years. Globally, electrification shares have stagnated just above 20%. This is the case in the US, in the European Union, Australia, and New Zealand, and between 25% and 30% in Japan, that is the most electrified major economy globally. But China's electrification has doubled since 2005, surpassing 27% in 2025. I want to also take the comments from Commissioner Jorgensen. Despite electricity only representing 20% of the final energy consumption, what we see is that in an increasingly electrified economy, electricity is the key fuel for 40% at least of strategic industries today. All digital industries, telecommunications, defense, health, and this trend is its real contribution to modern economies and modern life is set to increase. Also, I would like to highlight the superior efficiency of electricity is not properly reflected in those shares of electricity mix. So this 20% in reality is much more important than the figure would suggest. But of course, also, as Commissioner Jorgensen mentioned, it matters where the electricity comes from. China has a greater share of electrification, but 50% of their generation mix is based on coal. The acceleration in electrification has already been mentioned, has direct implications for systems, particularly for grids. Meeting forecasted electricity demand through 2030 would require, according to the IEA analysis, grid investment to increase roughly by 50% by 2030 globally from today's around $400 billion investment, and would also require a significant scale-up of grid-related supply chains. We are seeing bottlenecks in most electricity supply chains, from gas turbines to transformers to cables, and this is translating into rising equipment and construction costs. Therefore, while investment has already started to increase in Europe and North America, this higher spending is not translating into equivalent expansion on the ground. So ahead, the investment challenge is threefold: expanding and modernizing grids to connect new demand, connection queues. We heard 50% of countries in Europe has congestion, and we see 25 gigawatts globally of projects, demand and supply projects stuck currently in grid connection queues. Second challenge is replacing aging infrastructure in advanced economies. And third, in doing so in a way that preserves affordability for consumers. So, as I mentioned, electrifications of more end uses needs to be affordable, and for this, load factors matter. Also, was mentioned, and the utilization of capacities, existing capacities, continue to impose higher costs to consumers. As we advance in the transition away from fossil fuels through decarbonization of electricity supply, this means that the supply cost structure for electricity is mainly based in high cost, in fixed cost. And to be able, in the short run, to bear those costs, it is how much demand materializes is critical. If demand falls short, for example, due to delays in electrification, this raises the cost per unit and increases the burden on consumers. Inversely, a stronger demand, particularly from flexible and price-responsive demand like industry, helps dilute those fixed costs. This is illustrated in the data. In China, where electricity demand has grown rapidly, network investment costs per unit have declined. In contrast, in Europe and North America, stable demand has contributed to rising per unit cost. The key message is clear. Affordability requires aligning grid investment and system planning with the pace of electrification. Just two more slides. another important message is that we need to, in order to make more efficient use of existing capacities, grid enhancing technologies and digitalization is also important for keeping costs under control. There is significant untapped potential to get more out of the current assets. Unlocking this potential is critical to bridge the gap between the pace of electrification and the longer timelines required for new build, for grid expansion, and to support affordability. Our analysis shows that grid-enhancing technologies and regulatory adjustments and reforms that enable more flexible grid connections and usage can unlock significant near-term capacity while grid expansions advance. Together, these measures could free up enough grid hosting capacity to connect between 1,200 and 1,600 gigawatts of advanced stage projects currently stuck in queues worldwide. So overall, beyond grid expansion, smarter and faster use of existing grids is essential to enable electrification in an efficient way. Building on this, even with efficient grids, electrification will not scale without the right price incentives. In many European countries, electricity remains more heavily taxed than competing fuels such as natural gas. This weakens the economic case for switching and slows the uptake of electrified solutions. Taxes, fees, levies, and charges in a large share non-related to the energy supply make up a significant proportion of the bills for consumers. In the first half of 2025, this component accounted for just under 80 euros per megawatt hour, or 28% of the average electricity price for EU households. During the same period, the tax component on electricity was on average more than twice that of natural gas, and in some cases much higher. This disparity is also visible for industrial consumers, even when considering recoverable components such as VAT. The result is a misaligned incentive structure, distortions on relative competitiveness, and taking together these three, aligning investments with planning and demand growth, enhancing system efficiency with better usage, maximizing load factors of assets, and third, price signals as the cornerstone for the electrification is what we at the IEA see as the key things to scale and, in an affordable way, electricity demand. So many thanks for your attention, and I look forward to the discussion on this important issue today.
Many thanks, Maria, for setting the scene globally, but also with some interesting findings for Europe compared to China and US. Some of that, also including the last slide, we will include in our strategy or action plan on electrification due to come out in June. So a lot of input on that. Before we start the panel, a short and simple question on Slido. You can, as usual, scan the QR code, and the question is a yes or no. Is the general public sufficiently aware of the importance of electrification and its long-term benefits? So it's about the general public. What do you think? Are they efficiently aware? You can also vote on the panel or come back to the question when I ask you your question. So while hopefully you are ready to reply, I would like to start the first round. It's not so unexpected, I would say, the answer, but then my question would be, what can we do about it? So this panel is, as I said, we have several high-level experts and representatives, and I will start with Acer and Rafael. So as I mentioned, affordability is one of the key issues. Network tariffs are a quarter, roughly, an average of the household energy bill. We know, in average, they are varying between the member states, of course. And then we also know, and we heard it also right now, for electrification, we need, of course, more grid investments. And how can we make that balance between the network tariffs and the necessary grid investments? And what role can regulators play, as ACER is the coordinating body? Please, Raphael.
Thank you. Well, I'm not surprised about the answer, just to start with. I hope I don't disappoint. I don't think we will solve the issue of affordability in 2 minutes that I've been allocated. And we will not solve it because it's a complex challenge. I think there is no need to be an economist to acknowledge that. And also because we want it now, we want affordability, and we also want clean energy and secure energy. And we want it at a time that costs are rising at the same time, as we have discussed yesterday, and also our reporting on unit investment costs, for example, is illustrating. But I can offer a few aspects of reflection on how I think that regulators can contribute to this topic. So one aspect is cost trajectory. And there, it has been mentioned by the IEA, but there is, on the one hand, an expectation that the absolute cost of the network, if we focus on the network, will increase. But then there is also an expectation that this will be mitigated or absorbed with bigger demand. So the per unit, hopefully, will reduce. So there the question, and this is the aspect to focus, and yesterday there was a bit of comments about that, is to make sure that we get the investment right. And investment right also means prioritizing. Of course, cost-efficient technologies is there, but prioritizing is important to ensure we start with those that bring the biggest value, and the hypothesis of reducing costs come there. So this is one element of reflection to start with. A second one is, you were asking what regulators can do. And normally we can do what we are best at, because we are not good at everything. But where we are good at is contributing to market integration. This is the one thing that we should not forget, that this has been the lever of success, even if prices are not as low as we would like, but certainly they are lower than they would have been if there was no market integration. So in that aspect, we should go deeper. Robust planning is key there in terms of infrastructure, because it's the enabler for market integration. The grid package, but I guess I will not talk about it today, none of us. Then the other is optimizing assets. This has been mentioned many times, and this is always twofold. So the role of regulators, ACER, if you like, coordinated, or ACER providing good practices, because we don't have competencies there. But there is a need to really have incentives for system operators to adopt cost-efficient technologies. This is key, and there are good practices, but we are not yet there in doing it to the maximum we can do, in our view. And the same goes to network tariffs. It's not an easy task to rethink network tariffs at times, or to do reforms, because it's subject to political discussions, but it's a direction that also helps to use the network efficiently. And then maybe the last point is related to also the other part of the panel, so we'll leave it a bit for later, but still is the aspect of communication. And there I think that it's not only regulators, I think that there is a task for say, policymakers in general, including governments, the European Commission as well, us as well, to be honest and transparent on communication and communicate trade-offs. Because we, at the end of the day, if we want long-term benefits, eventually there is some temporary increase in bills, and this has to be communicated, because otherwise it will backfire, because expectations will not be met. There is a role there. And regulators specifically, we have to engage with consumers on the one hand. For example, when there are network tariffs, we have to do it transparently and soon. And also with policymakers, we have to be honest about the trajectory of investment versus benefits. And if the benefits are materializing, we should praise and emphasize it. But if they are not materializing and there is a need to realign or adjust, we think we should also say it. That's from my side.
Thank you very much, Raphael. I think you raised a number of very important points about transparency, communication, and also how the network tariff are structured, and the key role of ensuring the internal market. Antonella, you represent RGI, and the bloodwood of the RGI is also to look at public acceptance, stakeholder engagement, speaking to everyone, explaining the facts, and be very, very engaged with all different levels of policymakers, TSOs, and others. So what is your reaction, first of all, to the outcome of that question, and what can we do about it from your point of view?
Thanks a lot for having me, and also in this panel that touches many different points, because indeed RGI has been dealing with public participation, engagement, opposition since 2009. I feel like a dinosaur here. And it's not that we have failed to do what we said we would be doing, just the world has become more and more complicated, and therefore engaging the public, communicating with the public cannot be the task of a single entity, but it has to be a joint effort. And this is the, I think, a recognition that this is the case. So when you build infrastructure, and we got to build a lot of it, you always build it next to someone and in nature. That means that you got to take care of both the people that are located next to the infrastructure, but as well as the environment that is around that, because this is the environment that is used by the people one way or the other and has got some services. To do that, in the past, it was always looked at as a, project by project. You know, you engage on a project level and the minimum possible. And what we have learned over time is that this cannot be an add-on, but it has to be a strategic commitment towards engagement and communication. And very often in the past, it was the idea that our projects are already so expensive, and now more than ever, we cannot do this on top. The reality is that the cost of these engagements, that first of all, they are not costs, they are investments, but the costs are minor. You don't even see them in the project balance sheet. So let's look at those in a much more optimistic and creative way. What has happened is that last year at the forum, we were tasked, together with ASA and the Commission, to produce a beautiful report that you will find upstairs, where we basically work together on what, in practice, engaging plans should look like. And we have basically focused on some very simple steps, which is increasing awareness. Being on the ground is fundamental, because if you are not there, someone else are there and tell stories. So try to be on the ground as early as possible and stay there as long as it takes. Strategic planning. You just don't do a plan for A and then a plan for B. Just do strategically, put everything together. Embed this in the grid development plans, because then you will have better plans that are faster to deploy and will cost less. Permitting and routing, everyone is talking about speeding up permitting, but please try to understand what permitting hurdles really are before coming up with a legislative package that aims at solving all the problems of the world without really understanding where the hurdles are. And of course, you cannot have a plan if you don't implement and monitor the efficacy of that. So this piece of work, there's only a few pages, so you can read it very easily, is only the first step, and there will be more coming. And I thank very much ASA and the Commission for working with us on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Antonella. We will come back to it. And just on permitting, I don't think our proposal will solve the world, but it hopefully will increase the speed of permitting. But I know you need also the capacity, the people, and everything behind. Claire, I think you are really representative today of your council and a local community, and you have hopefully some best practice and some ideas to share how we can do better.
Yes, thank you very much, and I'm very glad to be here. I'm here as an elected local politician from the county of Clare, which is on the west coast of Ireland, but I'm here by way of my membership of the European Union institution that is known as the Committee of the Regions. So the president of the Committee of the Regions was invited to attend here today, but she asked me to attend in her stead. And the reason she did that is because I was appointed the rapporteur for the grids package that was discussed earlier by both the Commissioner and your member of the European Parliament. And in that guise, I was delighted to accept the appointment. My background is the law. However, when you take on such a role as drafting an opinion, you rely on expertise, such as, in my case, the former chief executive of the major transmission, not the distribution, but the transmission operator in Ireland. And we also had an advantage being from Ireland in taking on this opinion, because unlike many countries in Europe, we have only one DSO and one TSO. So it made it simpler for us to input the best practice that we can share in the formulation of the new grids legislation. Moreover, that grid legislation, yes, your MEP said earlier that the President Ursula von der Leyen is pushing hard to get this legislation in place before the summer session recess, but that's not likely. I'd say it's likely by the end of the year. But what did the Committee of the Regions and local elected people think in terms of this grids package and the legislation? Overall, very supportive, but again, to reinforce what you said. Engagement, community engagement. You also said the importance of policymakers and politicians understanding that they must increase the awareness that's out there and the importance of moving to renewable, moving to electrification. So the two key contributions we made in our adopted opinion, which was adopted at plenary session in March, were that benefit sharing must be mandatory and it must be commensurate with the costs and the usage that is taken from the grid. Those mechanisms must be built into the legislation. And the second recommendation, we'll see if this comes true, is to have greater local and regional authority involvement in permitting and investment decisions. So that's what we've recommended. We'll see if the legislation ultimately holds. What the legislation also has, which we support, is one-stop shop for permitting and digitalization of permitting. We would agree with that as local elected representatives in Europe, but we would also caution that such simplification must not then become centralization, which is a real concern. And just to give you some background as to my attendance here today as well, my first time ever in Denmark. I have to say I look forward to coming back because I'm returning to Dublin later on tonight. But yesterday I was in Arnhem, the Netherlands, again because of my rapporteurship on the grids package. And there I was asked to attend by the minister in that region of Netherlands, who's also a member of the Committee of the Regions. She wanted me to attend what is known up to this year as the Arnhem Electricity Forum, which is a 2-day event. And it's been in its existence now for 4 years. And next year it's going to be called the European Electricity Forum, because they're drawing so much interest and attendance from throughout Europe. And what I learned there, it was overwhelming, the information, but what I learned there is they had taken the lead in pushing for standardization in electrification. That's the best I can say it, but it was incredibly informative. So I look forward to, and in terms of sharing best practice, if you wish me to do right now, I was thinking of that this morning before I came along, and we would agree with what you all said there. We agree. But on a small scale, it's amazing what can happen in terms of improving awareness. So the example I wanted to share with you is this. So in Ireland, for the past almost 60 years, we have a competition for villages and towns to compete, to be recognized as the tidiest, the cleanest. Now, back in the day, that used to mean clean, as in perfectly manicured lawns, gardens, paint, buildings not looking tired or paint. But now, the winners are those that are showing value for the green agenda, sustainability, renewable energy being used locally, those points are getting higher and higher to win this competition. So what does that mean? It means that the 90 communities, towns, villages, and what have you, throughout Ireland who compete for that recognition, it's not even the monetary award, it's the prestige of it all. They now are inculcated with the importance of going green and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. All of that is inculcated all the way down to the local village. And the final thing I would share with you, at council level, what we also have within our county, my county, in case I haven't mentioned, is on the west coast of Ireland, Midwest, between Galway and Limerick as major cities. The reason why we have been important in the production of electricity since the foundation of the Irish state is that 100 years ago, we created the first hydroelectric plant on the longest river in Ireland, which is the Shannon. That is on the east coast of County Clare. And then on the west coast, we have the Atlantic. And on the Atlantic, since the 70s, we've had a major power center, but coal, and that's transitioning to green. So this is why I felt very comfortable taking the rapporteurship role. So I don't think I can go on any more except to say that at our council level, we have employed people who help the local communities. They're called community development officers. They go out and help local people understand the awareness of going green and going electric as well.
Many thanks. First of all, also for your work as rapporteur, and it's very important for us to get the view of the Committee of the Region and the local representatives. So, of course, it's now in the co-legislators' hands, but we are very receptive for all these points and also for highlighting what Ireland is doing in that context. I will go now, and there will be a second round, so to some of the points we can come back. I will now go to IFJEC, Hans Grünfeld. IFJEC represents the energy-intensive industries, so we will shift a little bit from the local to the energy-intensive. We heard about electrification, and of course, industrial electrification is a big part of it. Can you explain a little bit what you are doing to help these companies in electrification and how it impacts the affordability and the grids?
Thank you, and thank you for this invitation. Well, Europe faces a competitiveness challenge, which is probably as big, if not bigger, than the one in the 70s. And I'm referring to the one in the 70s because that was ultimately led to the energy, the deregulation, and very important development in Europe. And this time we are looking for solutions, we just heard this morning, through the energy transition. And I think that makes a lot of sense. But the concern that we have is obviously how to make the energy transition and to align at the same time the industry transition, which is equally important, of course, and which mutually reinforce each other. Because after all, the energy-intensive industry form the basis of the energy system, because they're responsible for a large part of the load, which obviously is important also in terms of making the system sustainable for the future. Now, the only problem with the energy-intensive industries, and that is a specific problem, is its price elasticity, which is different from, let's say, other industrial users, such as the ICT sector or less intensive industry energy users. And the rising cost, which will obviously come with the expansion of the infrastructure, runs a risk to affect demand for grid capacity. I mean, the numbers that were presented were somewhat optimistic, although I think you made a caution that in Europe the growth has been basically already in the early 20s. In fact, what we see in various countries is a stable, if not a negative, growth in electricity. And that is of big concern, not only because of the future of the energy-intensive industries, but it basically runs the risk of stranded assets for grid investors, which obviously also increases the risk premiums that financial players will ask. So we will have the risk of getting into a downward spiral with loss of energy-intensive industries, contribution to system cost, and ultimately also its loss of strategic autonomy, and not to forget the role of industry in decarbonizing society. So that's a big problem. Now the question is obviously how to contribute towards its solution, because we do have, of course, big opportunities as well as risks. Now I think the solutions should focus on both the cost side as well as the cost allocation. I mean, obviously, on the cost side, there is a portfolio of measures which can be taken, which are taken already. I mean, there are great initiatives also by the European Commission in providing attractive finance. Yesterday, we had a very interesting presentation by the European Investment Bank. So there's a lot of work being done on this part. But I think more is needed. In order to secure maximum capacity utilization of the existing capacity. Now, this morning's presentation on transparency obviously is a important development in the good direction, but there needs to be a lot more done in order to make sure that we use all the capacity that we have in order to reduce the cost. I think benchmarking, I missed that in the presentation of my colleague from Acer, but I think that is an important instrument, particularly for regulators, to use and to provide the right efficiency incentives to TSOs. And of course, also maximum incentives for the industry and other players to offer demand-side response and provide maximum flexibility. So that is a part of the solution, but we also need to look at the other side, which is the cost allocation. And President von der Leyen has already announced proposals for allowing member states to provide direct compensation to energy-intensive industries. I think that is absolutely a crucial element in the total package. But there are also other ways of cost allocation which could help to reduce the issue, such as the use of intertemporal cost allocation methods, also yesterday discussed, particularly in the context of hydrogen networks. A cap on network tariffs for energy-intensive industries is proposed by some of my colleagues. I'm not sure that is the right solution, but they refer to the cap for other grid users, particularly the electricity producers. And obviously, we should also look at tariff structures which allow the NRAs to award the energy-intensive industries for their contribution to increasing the load factor. Finally, I think when taking those measures, I think it's really important, and I think also the first presentation alluded to that, the risk of the European level playing field, because if you put too much emphasis on actions by the member states, that obviously is a big risk in Europe. I don't think that's the right way forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for highlighting the special role for energy intensives also in the current context. We are working on a couple of issues also for a proposal on network tariffs. Of course, if you exempt one, others have to pay more, so there is some balance and discussions still ongoing, but I think we will come back to it. Thanks. Now we have NSOE, the TSOs. Patricia, can you say a little bit about the role TSOs can play also on the affordability and the stakeholder engagement, please.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Well, I think that I would say that TSOs contribute to affordability both directly and structurally. Directly by ensuring a secure and efficient system operation, because that's somehow the backbone for a well-functioning market. And structurally, well, from a forward-looking planning. Here, affordability is not only about the grid tariffs today, it's also about the ones for the future, and I would like to remind this key message of the latest TYNDP, that €1 investment in European electricity network can save €2. That's it's a saving for all European consumers. So ensuring affordability in the future is a way of optimizing the system as a whole and making the right investments at the right time. And this part of the right time is also important. We talk perhaps much more about which are the investments or the right investments or the volume and so on, but the right time is also important because every delay means cost for the consumers. I would also say that that the transmission system is already a smart system, but it's improving its smartness. It's introducing more digitalization, more innovation, innovative technologies, more flexibility. The path has already started, and I guess that it will go on for sure. At NSOE we have the Technopedia, that is a kind of toolkit of solutions, and perhaps not all those solutions are seen, for instance, in the TYNDP, perhaps because project promoters consider that some of them don't solve the big gap that we have for some areas, but for sure we can see all the examples at national level. And at NSOE we also have the Grid Planning Hub, that it's well, a platform. It's similar to the Capacitypedia, yeah, where you can all take a look to the national development plans and see the details that are included and how all these technologies are considered. And it's not only about hardware, it's also about software. Software is also important, and it also can help a lot. And I would, for instance, mention an example that is the automatic power reduction system that is applied in Spain, that allows from the digitalization and communication between the control center and all the generator, or almost all the generations. It allows to not to consider the preventive N-1 criteria that is well known in the electricity sector, and it allows to solve somehow almost 70% of the needs that are in the system in the next years, in the midterm, which is a lot. And that if they wouldn't solve in such a way, they would need additional investments. So that solutions are also there, are being used, and they are important. And as challenge for the future, I would say that it's the implementation. I mentioned the delay. It's a cost already, and well, that means that solving all the challenges that we have there for the implementation are key, and well, we all have discussed about this: permitting, financing, regulatory incentives, and cost recovery.
Many thanks, Patricia. And in the first round, I now go to Peter for DSOs, and a little bit back to the local, regional, because you are closer to the household and not only the household, the smaller and bigger consumers with the distribution grids. And I was happy to hear, for example, in Ireland, there's only one DSO, because we represent many others in many other countries.
Yes.
So, Peter.
Yeah. No, indeed, and naturally, also we are happy to have Ireland, ESB, as one of our members, but DSO entity is representing 800 DSOs, covering more than 95% of all connections, but it illustrates indeed that there's a lot of diversity. Okay, but when going into your question, I will be relatively short on cost efficiency. A lot has been said, and I will elaborate a little more on awareness and acceptance. Naturally, if it is about affordability and the cost, DSOs aim at keeping cost as low as possible. We should accept, I think, that cost will increase because of electrification, but naturally we will use the existing capacity to its maximum, also using some of the examples illustrated by the International Energy Agency. And when we select projects for extension or smartening, we'll pick the most efficient choices, also challenged by our regulator. But now, if we go into the area of consumer awareness and acceptance, I would like to distinguish a bit between the long term and the short term. Let's first look at the long term. I think that for awareness and acceptance, it's important that we have a long-term vision, and we can have very strong and strict targets, but we need to give citizens and consumers the time to adapt. So if we take the time they need to make their own choices and options, acceptance will grow, and I am confident that in any case we will get started. I will be there in a minute. And the benefit of giving them time to adapt is also that they will influence each other. There is a very interesting project in my own home country where we have seen that sharing in a small neighborhood, smart metering data, voluntarily, no privacy issues, it challenges people and they join forces and then they get enthusiastic. So they inspire each other. So people inspire people, I would say. And that takes time, but it also gives a much better awareness and acceptance. Secondly, use natural moments. So it's not easy to force people to isolate the home when they are living there. But if you are moving homes, and that's a natural moment to do it, and you give then good incentives, you will see that there is a bigger uptake. So logical moment and create options and a bit of lead time. However, not waiting too long, because there are also short-term measures that help. And for that, I think not only the geopolitical situation, but especially also a bit of the current problems in some countries with congestion, they help. We can see that citizens, consumers are understanding the grid congestion and they're willing to help. And simple things help. Just think about 8 to 10 in the morning, typically 6 to 8 at evening. People are willing to help, and simple measures already are advancing a lot, also freeing up capacity. So long-term vision, it helps, but short-term measures even reinforce that.
Many thanks, Peter, and also for highlighting some of the short-term. I would say you are part of the 19% here who know about the benefits of electrification, what to do, and I think we are probably more privileged, but thank you for sharing, absolutely. Maria, you want to react to some of these first panel discussion points, and then we go to the second round.
Very quickly, I fully agree with most of what has been said, but particularly I think it's very important to get network tariff right. And there is a temptation for governments to use network charges and electricity bills for purposes not related to the value chain of the supply. And for me, this is a short-term lever that is in the hands of governments and is of paramount importance if we want to promote electrification on a level playing field.
Many thanks also for that point. I'm sure it will come in our action plan, electrification in some way. We are taking it up. I will go back to Antonella because she already spoke about the roadmap towards public engagement. That was something doing together, as you said, with Acer and RGI and some of my dear colleagues here at DGNR. Could you explain a little bit more in detail? You mentioned it, the purpose of the roadmap, what were the challenges, and how we want to go about it. You presented it quickly, but go a bit more deeper, because it was a lot of work, as you said, and we would all like to benefit more.
Thanks a lot. I would like to say that it is always a lot of work because it touches our vision of life. You know, it's a culture piece of work. Either we do things because we believe it, or we don't do that. But what has happened is that a lot of our RGI members, the TSOs, the members of NGOs, but also in collaboration with the European DSOs agency, I mean, a lot of the members, they have already experienced on how to properly engage the public. What we really need now is a full understanding that it has to be a strategic cultural decision within companies and within the regulatory bodies and within the politicians that these processes have to be the norm. And so the roadmap is an instrument to support TSOs and DSOs and even project developers and public authorities on how to embed engagement processes that are robust and meaningful to the people, not only to the ones that deliver this process, but to the people. Because if they are not meaningful to the people, then they are worth nothing. Of course, we want more. We cannot have a list of that you tick, nice, done, very good. We want something that it is really implementable and brings benefits. So moving ahead, we are looking for piloting certain activities, testing, monitoring, and evaluating what is the actual impact. We will develop very clear guidance. Yesterday, in the conclusion of the forum, there was this commitment to actually do this work, so I'm very happy about that. And of course, we have already a very wide pool of practices that needs to be discussed. We can learn a lot from each other, but only if we are really committed and open to discuss not only what went well, but also what doesn't really work. Because what the tendency we have is that we always go and try to reinvent what, inventing hot water over and over again. But the reality is that if we make what works much more visible, then we can say, okay, that's the benchmark. That's my starting point. I don't want to go below that, and I want just build on top. So the roadmap is really focusing on practical instruments for project developers, DSOs, and public authorities, kind of a decision trees to follow, something practical, but also a very strong monitoring system, because to take decision, at the end, these are also investment decisions in time and money, you need to make sure that they work. And this will give confidence to the energy regulators when they really approve these costs. And I hope what we will see in a year time, that there is a commitment towards having an investment plan which includes a dedicated budget for engagement and communication. Because if it is in the budget as a lump sum and not a tiny bit per project, then you will see major differences when the project developers do not have to argue project by project. And I think this would be absolutely relevant for speeding up the build-up of the grids, but also to increase the awareness that is so much needed. And one word, if you allow, about affordability. Of course, this is not part of the roadmap, but as RGI, we do a lot of work on grids, package, and affordabilities these days. And I would like just to stress the fact that the cost, the price of energy has been and always is a political decision. We have seen in the presentation of the IA the levies that are put on fuels. This is a political decision. It's not a market decision. And so if we know, and we know, that we got to electrify, then we need to make electricity cheaper than other fuels. And then you help people to change. Thank you. Sorry for adding this. It was not in the script, but I never follow the script.
Exactly. Happy to go off script. And anyhow, on that basis, and the last slide and what you just said, we have started already in the action plan on affordable energy, looking at the 4 components, as we say, so the energy part, but also the network charges, the other levies, and so on. And we will go back to that ratio, electricity, gas taxes, in the action plan, and might cover it in one way or the other in the proposal. So it's really a plea. Of course, taxes are national competences, and it's good to see, of course, the huge differences, to be honest, between the 27 EU member states to focus on that. So we will put even more pressure on that.
And one more thing.
Sure.
We don't have much time because we are in the worst energy crisis ever. Fatih Birol has said that this is not worse than the previous one, it's worse of all the previous one combined together. And so you mentioned, Raphael, that we need to be honest, we need to communicate with people. We should stop fooling people and telling them energy will be cheaper. It will not be cheaper. But maybe it is more sustainable, more secure, more resilient. And so leaving the choices to pick and choose, I think we don't have the possibility anymore. And being honest, I think it will lead to much more acceptability and less possibility for some groups to abuse and shape mindset in a direction that will not be good for the energy transition and no for democracy. Leave it there.
Thank you. It's also an interesting aspect. But with Raphael, who has the mic, I would like to go back to the roadmap because, as Antonella said, ACER was very much involved. There is a role for regulatory authorities. So please explain your work in the roadmap, but also the role of the regulatory authorities.
So maybe to summarize what ACER has been doing in public engagement and what regulators do, I mean, first reflection is possibly we are not doing sufficient in light of the of the importance that the topic is taking. Now, I mean, ACER has been involved maybe in 2 streams lately. One is the development of the roadmap, as you know, and the other that is also part of dissemination. I think at any time we have occasions to provide recommendations, for example, in the recent, last year, guidelines on planning at distribution level, we put stakeholder engagement as one of the priorities, one of the elements. So whenever we have an opportunity to put this as at the core, we do it, because we are convinced that it's part of the equation more than ever. On regulators, what I have been told and what we found out in the course of the discussions on public engagement is one key word is diversity. And this is just, of course, the classical situation with many regulatory aspects, but in this case it's more than in any other because in some cases regulators have strong competencies on permitting. One example being Germany, for just to mention one. And there is a scope to be part of public engagement more intensively, and other member states, sometimes smaller, but sometimes also with different competencies, have less. So this is in itself a challenge, but this is also why, and yesterday it was endorsed, this is to take us a next step to move to templates, to move to implementation, to move to best practices. We do support that in the sense that it will be an opportunity to also manage expectations on where regulators have a better fit in supporting engagement. Then I think you were also asking about tools, and I think that in the course of yesterday's and today's conversations, there have been some good examples that we also identified in the course of the work on public engagement. One is the transparency platforms that was presented before. This is key, so possibly we should go deeper into that and having more accessible at all levels, so not only a part of Europe, but to all of Europe, ideally. Something that was mentioned is, and I think that you mentioned Mechtild as well, is in the permitting legislation, is having benefit schemes for those communities where they are having the infrastructure passing through. Those are good practices. We also being aware of incentives, for example, in France, for early registration. If the registration is done within a certain period, then you have more possibilities and incentives to be connected soon. If you do it out of the period, then you have less. No? So those incentives also help. And maybe to summarize, we do see value in the work of public engagement, and the hope is that this diversity, at the end there are some front runners, and those that are front runners, possibly those that signed the Pact for Engagement, for example, they also create a learning ecosystem there. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rafael Foeser. I will go to Peter. On the DSO level, Pact for Engagement, how are DSOs involved in that layout of grids and in the public engagement way?
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, indeed, also nice to see the final design and introduction now. Antonella, we're happy to contribute, and we think it will be a good source of inspiration. Now, before I share a bit on how DSOs are working on it, I think that we should also be, how do you say that, honest that it's no easy task, especially not in society that is more and more characterized by individualization and consumerism. It's not easy to create awareness and acceptance because tolerance and solidarity are at a relatively low level, even. And we can also discuss the political dimension of that, Antonella. But we should realize that it's not easy. But still, we can do a good job there. Especially, I think, if we do not only refer to the benefit of the energy transition, but also if we make people more aware about the need for security of energy. And I think more and more the geopolitical situation will help us to accept that also by citizens. Now, how do DSOs go with all of this? Many DSOs have invested and are invested increasingly in local public engagement. What we see is that it works good if you are early in engaging, and it is also key to go together with local authorities, because that is in fact what works best, the local culture and the local procedures, because as a grid operator, either TSO, DSO together were appropriate, or DSOs only. In fact, you do together with the local authority the best job, because they are legitimized in taking democratically supported decisions. DSOs are only like an instrumental in that. And if you do that, we can see that especially if you engage in a benefit sharing type of schedules, but also showing a little bit the necessity for both security and the value of energy transition, that there is a lot of engagement and acceptance. But it's also time consuming. It is intense, and I've been there myself when I was a CEO in many rooms like this with many local people discussing everything in an intense way. It's nice to do, but also intense. But let's keep going, and the roadmap will give inspiration there.
Thank you very much, Peter. Very time consuming. NSOE first, and then back to Antonella.
Thank you very much. NSOE is a signatory of the part of engagement, and we welcome all the practice there, and also welcome this roadmap that gives good ideas about global understanding of the public engagement at European level. I would say that public engagement is somehow co-creating the future, and we have seen in the pool data that we consider that the awareness of the people is not enough. It's important there to have a shared knowledge, a shared understanding, and to create value there of these type of plans. We have to work on ensure that people understand why the projects are needed, and with all the dimensions for that. It's not only about the project themselves, but more even going into the reasons of policy, and Peter mentioned some things there. And also people need to understand how the needs are solved, how the alternatives are being considered, how the challenges are being addressed, how much the projects cost, and how they are paid. Yeah, all that it's relevant, and there the public engagement is key. Early public engagement, and it can take several forms, from information to consultation to empowerment of the stakeholders, allowing them to co-create the solutions there. And there are some good examples around the TSO community with transparency, data-driven communication, interactive tools. There are also some examples of visual and digital platforms that allow to understand complex infrastructure projects and make them tangible somehow. Also, I think that the roadmap gives a European framework, but I guess that is also important to go to the ground. We mentioned before, turn this roadmap into actions themselves, and go to the local, involving more the TSOs, the DSOs. Perhaps there NSOE doesn't have a full role as an association, but all the members have. And there with the local presence, also there are good examples from our TSO community. One can be the Community Benefits Fund, that it's an example in Ireland, but there are also some community liaison coordinators that are people that are on the ground and that try to accompany and support the local people from the idea to the construction and all the process in between, because people sometimes don't understand what's happening and why it's happening. So that are good examples that are already happening, and that I guess that with this initiative we have to work more on that, because if we need to deploy a high amount of infrastructure, we need.
Thank you very much. A lot of good points, and it reminds me we are organizing also once a year the PCI days in Brussels, where there is a lot of showcasing, a lot of interactive, a few days with stands from our projects and on-stage awards by RGI and others. So we really do a lot, and I think it's part of the role of the Commission also to help and facilitate share best practice. But Tonella, you wanted to come in, and then I think...
Yes, I'm sorry, sometimes I get depressed. But public engagement, it's not a one-way communication. It's not the project developer going and telling the people, the audience, oh, this is the project, we do it like this, and blah, you will win, and you will lose, I'm sorry. No, it is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to establish a relationship there to stay. So it's not time-consuming. It's an opportunity to do a better project, to have the possibility to go back and build something new 5 years later. It's a relationship. And so as long as you see engagement as a tick in the box of sending a flyer or explaining with a presentation, where you have missed the point. And you are going to miss the opportunity of getting friends on the ground that will allow you to build faster. And I'm sure you understand what I mean.
Thank you. I don't think that was the intention, but good to clarify. First Claire and then Maria, because I think there's a direct link.
Absolutely. I fully endorse what Antonella is saying. Local for local builds the local goodwill. It'll yield the long-term reward. And in terms of sharing a current experience that I'm dealing with back home at the moment, is a solar farm that is being built. And that's all very positive. No problem. It was granted permission. But what happens? You have to start digging up the roads to lay the cabling, to get to the substation, to feed to the grid. And this is now where the problems are occurring. because along the road there are farmers that are not happy with the road being dug up, causing inconvenience. There's a business there, a quarry, where they can't get to his quarry. He's not happy. And there's a bridge that they have to cross, and it's a very old bridge. And there's a concern about the structural integrity of the bridge should they dig up the road and go underneath with the cabling. So here am I, along with other elected politicians, trying to ameliorate relations. And even as of just yesterday, I was on emailing with the planners to confirm that they had included every single townland and identified every single townland in the planning application, because one townland was left out that was adjoining where the bridge is. So these are the kind of on-the-ground difficulties that can result when the communication isn't there in the town hall from the get-go. What would really have been helpful there, and we're all in support, even the community that is complaining is in support of the solar farm, but if there had been a town hall meeting in that local community where the developer had come in, shown people on the map exactly what was going to happen, we wouldn't have these little ironing out these creases now as they're trying to dig up the road. And they have started and they're digging, and now they want to cross the bridge, and their concern is a little medieval bridge. It's not even a heritage bridge protected, but still it's important to the locals, and we want to ensure there isn't obstacles put in their way. So this is where those kind of lack of communication causes problems down the road, and I think it's Antonel's message is hugely important to all of you here today as the enforcers and regulators and all of you that are involved in building out these grids and moving us towards the renewables that we all agree is needed. I mean, and I just want to support what's been said here. I think that the buy-in, the public engagement, the awareness of the need has certainly been accentuated in recent times, most especially by what Mr. Trump has done in Iran. But also, I really thought it was a great comment this morning from I think it was the commissioner. He said, if Putin turned off the taps, I mean, it's incredible how vulnerable and vulnerable is the word rather than dependent, because without our energy, we are absolutely victim to be abused, and it's very concerning. And I think if the general public, from anybody on the street who would hear what was said by the commissioner there this morning, that would be a real eye-opener for people.
No, thank you very much. I think also taking an example of a solar farm, which everyone would say we fully agree it's a good thing, and how it translates in some concrete steps, and also the bridge to the bigger picture, which, depending on the country and also the political situation, energy plays, unfortunately, sometimes a bigger role than sometimes we want to. But I will give, in this first round, Maria and Hans the role, and then I will open for some question from the audience. So you can already think if you want to raise a question. We have a bit of time. But first, Maria and Hans.
I just would like to contribute with evidence from IEA work and drawing on 98 cases across 25 countries. What we find is that engagement models that go beyond consultation, giving communities a genuine role as participants and beneficiaries, deliver the strongest impacts and reduces the risk of litigation and the costs of litigation, conflict, and project delays that also translates into cost overruns. IEA research, including through stakeholder engagement, has identified a set of 4 groups of good practice: stakeholder mapping and consultation, which is gathering input and facilitating dialogue. Second, information and transparency, raising awareness and sharing clear information, not just technical information. Third, co-creation and shared decision-making. Again, the point by Antonella is a two-way process, ensuring communities capture the rationale and participate in shaping projects and policies. And fourth group, which I already mentioned, but looks like the most impactful, good practice is benefit sharing, ensuring that communities capture social and economic value. There are examples in Ireland, but there are also examples in Australia or in Canada.
Sure. I think it's also good to see a bit the global picture that others are also advancing on that question. Please, Hans.
Thank you. My contribution to acceptance, I think, more in general, I mean, in addition to many wise words that have been across the table, I think it's very important that people feel the opportunity to influence their own cost. So I think I may differ with my dear colleague Peter that congestion is actually very frustrating for particularly consumers, both household as well as industrial consumers, because it actually restricts their opportunities and their possibilities to influence their cost and their impact on the system. So turning now to more general, I played for a stronger correlation or collaboration between the energy and industry transition, which I think is not only necessary to make both happen, but also to make it more efficient and therefore reduce costs and therefore obviously make it more acceptable to all. And one of the and that requires something from particularly the grid operators, both DSO and TSO level, because on the one hand, we as a society have awarded them with a monopoly. We have given them a very, very specific societal task, and I think there's a very strong obligation from their side to engage with all of us. To actually make their facilitation role also possible, and therefore at least 3 concrete suggestions and maybe also good practices which I've witnessed. One, I've been involved myself, which was in the Netherlands. We have made an agreement with the regulator and 14 different stakeholders about the grid planning process and the effective involvement of all the stakeholders. So not just a hearing or something, but really from the start through the whole process, so from scenario development towards identifying the gaps and so on. And I think this is very important not only for industrial players, but also for the grid operators themselves, because they always have the same question, namely, what's the industry going to do? I mean, how much load are they required, and so on. So that's the first one. The second one has to do with investment decisions, and investment decisions on the side of the industry also depend obviously on visibility of grid cost development. And we see now positive developments both on the electricity as well as the natural gas side, a willingness on the side at least of the TSOs to provide a 10-year outlook of tariff development, obviously with all kinds of explanations and contexts. It's not a that is very helpful for particularly those who are also facing investment decisions on the industry side. And the third and last one, come back to that, mentioned already earlier, which has to do with obviously more transparency about the available capacity. And well, one is to make capacity which is available visible. We've looked at we've seen the presentation this morning. I just checked one example and I found immediately that there is still some work to do, but I mean, it's a good initiative and I'm very happy with the initiative. But this is really critical for all players to become engaged and be able to play their role within the system. We need that information. We need that information also on the short run. And last but not least, we need also a commitment that this capacity is not just available on screen, but in real life as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans. So we heard a number of arguments and best practice of, on affordability or also on public acceptance. So I would like to open the question. We have 20 minutes or so for questions. I can cut short the conclusions, so we have a bit of time for questions. So please raise your hand and eventually say who you are. I have two gentlemen behind, so I will take the two. And if you have a specific question, say to whom you address, otherwise I will pick the one.
From French regulator. Thanks for this debate, very interesting. I was wondering whether we are not too much supply-oriented. I think this debate on public engagement is for sure critical. And EU DSO rightly mentioned the time necessary for consumers. I think that when we talk about affordability, and it's a debate we had yesterday about how to launch investments, when to decide, let's be aware that if demand is not there, in the end, it will be costly for the consumers. So the way we address investment decisions is far from being neutral there, even though we all agree there are big needs. The other aspect is to be aware of, let's say, the same kind of issues for big investments. I mean, the supply side, the supply chain constraints. There are also some supply chain constraints in terms of appliances. Electric vehicles are very expensive. A lot of people cannot afford. We know that more and more we're importing Chinese vehicles. That's a strategic question. In terms of heat pumps, also, we have some lead times. I mean, we need to have people installing them and so on. We need to have the skilled people. So it may be the case that when we see that demand is not developing as fast as expected, there could be also some other constraints which are outside our sector. So my question is how to also include these elements within the reflection, because there are big impact in terms of affordability for consumers.
Thank you very much. I will pass that question. You can already think who would like to take it on the demand side. Very good question, but I will take, yes, please.
Yeah, Volker Wendt, Europa Cable. Fully agree on what has been said on the need for communication, and I think the Irish example is perfect, because after the annoyance of the installation works, the cables both on the road and crossing the sensitive bridge will be invisible. So it is really for the part of the construction that is important. Let me come to my question. For the high and extra high voltage grids, as Europa Cable, the European industries have developed what we call the concept of partial undergrounding. What we mean with that is that in sensitive areas, undergrounding can complement overhead lines. Antonella mentioned that there is, of course, the two dimensions of people, so highly densely populated areas or areas of outstanding natural beauty to come in. And we see projects in Ireland, in Germany, and across Europe where this works. Of course, the undergrounding at the initial set is more expensive than the overhead line will be, but we've also heard, even on this panel, that the greatest cost, not to society, but to us, will be the delay of the project. So my question, I don't know, maybe to Antonella or others on the panel, what can be done to ensure that partial undergrounding is considered from the outset of project planning? Because if a project is planned as an overhead line and we then need to go back to the drawing board, we lose valuable time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Two very good questions. So I will turn to Antonella first, but everyone else, please fill in, I guess, Peter and Patricia, but I open it. Antonella.
So very briefly, I want to touch on the first part, on the demand side. From a public acceptance point of view, I think what would be really useful is to explain to people what is the revenue scheme of the TSOs and DSOs. These are regulated entities, but in the mindset of citizens, there is not much difference between DSOs and Shell making millions due to the current crisis. So something to think about partial underground. This is a bit better question for me. What we learned, at the beginning, everyone was saying, we don't want overhead lines, we need to put everything underground. And the reason why was that you don't have environmental impacts and people don't see it, so they will be happy. Then we started to do undergrounding and we discover, oops, that's not really the case, because first of all, from an environmental point of view, in some places you should not do undergrounding, in some others you should do undergrounding. And from a social point of view, we had some very crazy reaction, like people say, no, we don't want underground because then we don't see and there is electromagnetic field and maybe it's dangerous. But the real thing is that undergrounding, it's a much bigger disruption in the building phases. So I fully agree with the idea of partial undergrounding. And if you plan with it in mind from the very beginning, you will know in advance where partial undergrounding makes sense from both an environmental and a social point of view. And when you start then dialoguing with the different communities, you can explain what is the difference between having a pylon or digging at the trenches for the undergrounding. So you anticipate what is going to be falling on communities, and the reason for doing that from the very beginning. And this is usually brings a lot more acceptability. Want to add one more thing. Very often we talk about people as if everyone is an idiot. Well, people are not idiots. I mean, sometimes, well, some people, but generally, generally not. They have real, legitimate concerns. And that's why it is worth listening to them, because their opinions, their beliefs do matter. And so once you learn to listen to people, next time you go there, you are better prepared. You have better answers. You have done your own works, and everything can go much, much faster. So partial undergrounding, I think I like it.
Very good. But maybe other views, or
well,
same views or other views? Yeah, depends.
Thanks. First, related to the comment of the French regulator, I could say that the planning process is a living process, and that's why it's important to look to the long term and to update frequently, that assessment, so that we can incorporate somehow all the progress of how the demand evolves, how all those supply chains that also affect to the demand are going on. So yesterday we commented national development plans are the proper framework also to link the connections to the grid investments, both transmission network development plan and distribution network development plan, and with a proper coordination among them. So that think that is one of the ways to address that. Related to partial undergrounding, I think that somehow it's already considered. It's a case-by-case analysis. Sometimes there are regulations that already establish where it can be underground, where cannot be underground. That's also important. And of course, there is an issue of the cost compared to the overhead lines. But there is also an additional assessment there about if the system can work properly, and if there are other additional investments that are required because you underground more than compared to the overhead line, and some compensation, for instance, for related to voltage, and that has to be considered in that assessment. So it's a kind of CBA analysis that compares cost benefits globally, and also taking into account that part of the underground can also allow to do things faster. And I mentioned before that timing is important, so that's somehow a part of the benefits that should be considered in that kind of CBA.
Okay, but I think it's also considered, if I got the question right, from the very start, because the country I know best, that question was popping up in, out, and that delayed. Should we do it undergrounding or not? And I guess that's happening. So I think that's... Peter wanted to come in, Antonella, Maria.
I think I just join you there, Patricia, on this adaptivity that we need in the planning cycle, also reacting to the French regulator question. And I think we are on a learning curve together there, right? Both regulator and DSOs and TSOs. We come from an era of quite strict cost control and risk mitigation. What we need to learn is that energy transition is also about managing and navigating uncertainty. And we need to learn to do that together. With some stakeholder involvement, naturally also, but it's a new capability for both of us. And well, there I join you indeed in this adaptivity of the planning cycle.
Thank you very much. I think we have a few examples where this adaptability is already happening. I mean, I don't need to go to Ukraine where the TSO, DSO are adapting daily, but I think there are also some other less extreme cases. Who wanted to come in? Antonella, Maria, Raphael, in that order.
Okay. I want to link to this planning, to the instruments that actually we have available, and many of you don't like land use planning, strategic environmental assessment. These are not only burden, these are not requirements. If you apply this instrument early on, as they are meant to be, then you can do this type of early planning that Volker was mentioning, where it's, these instruments give you a visibility of the territory. It tells you what is where, and therefore also what you can avoid. Right from the beginning, this is an incredible opportunity to reduce time, implementation time. Because the worst thing a project developer wants to face is being there with the machine and say, stop, we cannot build anymore. And so please make use, understand how these instruments can become essential in your planning phases and how you can use them to speed up the entire process.
Very good. Maria?
Thanks, Mathilde. I just wanted to introduce an additional element, also reacting to the French regulator, which is in addition to the traditional cost components of the power supply value chain and the bottlenecks and the cost inflation in what we are seeing in equipment and on appliances, we need to include increasingly a cost for security of power supplies. The IEA is working on this as we are discovering new vulnerabilities, both technical or from geopolitical or the hardware, but also in the software. And this is a dimension that is a public good. So who pays deserves also a reflection.
And that is partially covered in the grids package and in the negotiation already, the cybersecurity, hybrid threats, but it will also be in the next package. But it's an important element. Raphael.
Just a small addition on what was said before about the comment of Benoit about electrification and the pace. I mean, one aspect that is important is in planning is that adaptability in the sense, one element clearly is demand. That at the end is what drives everything. Sometimes we see forecasts that are non-credible. And there is a reason, because sometimes it's to keep the ambition, and we understand that. But at the same time, I think that all of us and all the stakeholders, the society is mature enough to understand that some things can go slower or faster, and realistic forecast, I think, is part of the equation here. So a plea to normally keep an eye on if things go slower for a reason, we can acknowledge and we can incorporate to planning, because this will be to the benefit of everyone. And the other is coherence of policies. If electrification is lagging behind, was possibly all those measures on incentives for electric heating, for example, or standardization that was mentioned before, should be also part of the package of policies to ensure that electrification goes faster.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Antonella?
I want to build on this security element, because this is becoming a nightmare for everybody. And we recently suggested the German government, who has the presidency of NSEC, the North Sea Energy Cooperation, to explore opportunities for aligning the security agenda with the environmental agenda. Now, you may think that I'm completely nuts, but there is some logic in there. Especially in the North and Baltic Seas, we have seen a lot of incidents, and these are not going to stop anytime soon. Governments have committed to protect marine areas, marine protected areas. Now, if you would create marine protected areas around the wind farms, along the cables, and adopt the technologies that actually we use for monitoring birds, underground monitoring, for environmental purposes, you can extend it. These are the same technologies that can also detect a submarine, unwanted submarine passing by. And so protected area in the marine space could actually become one of the very effective measures to avoid intrusion. And I'm saying this because we live in a world of scarcity. We still very often think that we have all the abundance of everything. The reality is that this time is over. We need to do more with what we have. And so combining agendas, seeing where are the overlaps of sometimes perceived as exclusively or contradictory political objective, actually this is the greatest opportunity that we have.
Thank you. There's still time for a question. I see one hand at least, two hands. So 2 quick questions from the 2 hands. There's a lady in...
I have the microphone. So if
you go first.
Hi everyone, I'm Vasiliki Klonari from Wind Europe. I have a question for all panelists. There is a general misconception that if we do not invest now in electrification, in grids, and we just stick to what we have, conventional assets, imported fossil fuels, it will cost people less. However, we have many data points, so at Wind Europe we have, but I know many other stakeholders in the room have studies that show that if we invest now very quickly, so before the following decade, it will cost us much less than, for instance, continuing to import or expanding nuclear assets and so on. So my question is, how do the panelists think we should navigate this in terms of public acceptance? How do we explain to people that we invest now, but it will, actually this investment is big, but is much smaller than sticking to business as usual?
Thank you. Good question on explaining the different sides of the cost if we invest in the clean transition compared to what we pay, for example, for imports of fossil fuels. Please, yes.
Good morning, Riccardo Vailati, Italian Regulatory Authority. The last 2 interventions mentioned scarcity, and before that, ambition, maybe excess of ambition. I wanted to repeat 5 words which I mentioned yesterday: in the end, consumers pay. And I would also like to give a positive acknowledgement, because I think it was the first speech in this session, mentioning prioritization, mentioning, let's say, that we have to be careful in deciding on projects. My question, do you think Acer will be able to focus the development of projects on 2030 needed projects, avoiding the effect that we see increasingly in Europe of long-term benefits, 2040, 2050, and the message that everything is needed?
Thank you very much. So this question was clearly for Acer and Raphael, and then I will open whoever who wants to reply to the first question.
Thank you. I love when a regulator asks a question that are part of conversations among us. I think linking to what the question of Wind Europe, I think that here there are three key words that I would say. One is, and I said it before, so there has to be an honest conversation about the prospect that is clear. An honest conversation about cost and benefits. We have to transparently communicate what are the benefits that we see in the long term, so that if there is an increase in the short term of costs, this is accepted. Then I cannot agree with you more, Ricardo. I think prioritization is the other key word. And sometimes we have difficulties among us to have these discussions because there is a sense that all projects are important for a reason. If we are able to have a meaningful conversation in really selecting the projects that will bring benefits, then I think we will be making a favor to all of us. And the other keyword is monitoring, in the sense we have to, because we are in a way accountable as regulators, but also system operators, also governments, all that are involved, need to really monitor if the hypotheses of benefits are materializing, and this will help them to take the subsequent decisions.
Thank you for your clear answer, Raphael. Maybe Hans, who hasn't spoken in the last one.
I would like to respond to the question
Yes.
from Wind Europe, which I think is a very good question, and obviously I also already alluded to that in, I think, my introduction. I mean, we're facing a huge competitiveness crisis in Europe, and that doesn't mean that we should sit on our, on our chairs and not move. On the contrary, we need to make the transition, but we have to make the transition not just for some, let's say, strong players that can actually survive the transition and be part of the lucky few in the future. And therefore, I think the issue is not, the question is not so much whether or not we should move away from the current fossil-based system towards a renewable system. Now the question is how to make this transition possible for all involved, and specifically for two very, very vulnerable sectors, one of them being the industry which is exposed to global competition, so which cannot afford to increase its cost too much above a certain level, but also equally applies to household consumers that are exposed to energy poverty. They are in a very similar situation, and I don't think anyone is willing to argue that we just should continue doing this and disregarding the effects on those two sectors. And I think that's what we need. That's the additional challenge that we have with the, let's say, more technical challenge of building our future sustainable energy system, namely also to look at the rules of economics, which basically tell that if the costs are increasing, demand might be reduced, and if that's okay, fine. But I hope I made clear that there are at least two examples of sectors where I don't think it's in societal interest to reduce demand.
Absolutely. Yes, Antonella, Claire?
I started with the point of the 5 words at the end, consumer pay. I think that what we need to do as a society, and probably also energy regulators, ASA, to understand that there is more than one way to pay what we pay. So a cost comes in many different forms. I leave it for the break. But for the other point, I think we systematically make a major mistake, because we go to, we discuss the energy transition, which is a marathon. It's a long term. It's made of years and years of investment. And when we talk with communities, households, and so on, we talk about the energy transition. But a lot of the people that are opposing this, increasingly, are the people that don't make it to the end of the month. And so if we want their support, we need to think with their perspective how to get to the end of the month. And so we need to distinguish what is energy policy and what is social policies. And I think there have been attempts around Europe to do that, but not, I don't think there is a full awareness that we need to decouple and at the same time align these two. Because if we go to a family that on the 15th doesn't have money anymore to buy stuff for the fridge, feeding the kids, well, you cannot talk about the benefit of the energy transition. It doesn't work. So we need to be a bit more, I think, more sophisticated, also in how we communicate with what are the messages.
How we do that?
Thank you. I just want to follow on from that. So when I was drafting the opinion for the Committee of the Regions on the grids package, as I had mentioned, I thankfully had the expertise of the former chief executive of EirGrid, which is the TSO, transmission operator in Ireland. And one thing he kept saying was, the buy-in from the public, it's essential that you bring it back to the price of electricity. And that's the challenge. And you earlier, Antonella, mentioned government policy on taxation. That's an area we have to look at. We recently, and I'm sure it got European coverage, with the Iran war, we had a serious problem in Ireland where the haulage companies, hauliers and the tractors were brought onto the highways to impede travel, to get the attention of government that they needed to do something about the taxes, the excise taxes on diesel, petrol, etc. And it got attention, and the government did act, but it got to a point where the protest became a blockade. And again, it reminds me of the Commissioner's comment earlier this morning about turning off the taps. And he, I think, followed on, his comment was, the turning off of the taps in Denmark would have a problem, but if they were turned off to Germany, it would just shut down Europe in terms of production. I think he kind of said that pretty much. Well, in Ireland, when it moved from a protest impeding traffic on the motorways to a blockade of a major oil refinery port in Cork, that's when it became unacceptable. And that's when the Prime Minister made it very clear, we cannot have this. If we were to permit that, we would be shutting down production, and that was not permissible. But it goes back to what was being said, is that governmental policy was changed. The excise duty on the diesel and petrol was reduced, but we have to talk about tax on electricity. We have to address that. And if indeed that can be targeted to the people that you're mentioning, the companies that are highly dependent on cost of energy and electricity to remain competitive, and the lower families, and indeed we do have certain targeted fuel allowances for people in Ireland, and indeed recently all of us benefited from credits because of the wars, but that needs to be more targeted. But yeah, I think governmental policy needs to be moderated and customized.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And that reminds me what also the Commissioner said and what we say in Accelerate EU. Of course, if there is support for diesel or jet fuels or people and the social aspect, of course, which is in, it should be temporary, because otherwise it has the opposite effect in the long term, and then electrification and what we want is not happening. A last word, Patricia?
A last word, yeah.
We have to conclude at some stage now. So.
Okay, so very quick, linking with this topic about communication, and I guess that we all in the energy sector have to improve the communication. Important thing I would say is perhaps identify the audience also and the channels to reach that audience. the couple in their 50s that Antonella mentioned probably is not going to read a report or to that we publish or I don't know or see a forum that that is talking about this issue. So I think that we have to select the channels, also involve schools, universities, so that from the beginning they are aware of what's going on and they are prepared for the future.
Okay, there's no panel without a last word of Antonella.
Practices of the Year Award. I already invited yesterday Litgrid to participate, but I would like to take the opportunity to tell you that the new edition is now open. You can submit your practice, and if you are lucky, you will be on stage together with Mechtil and myself or someone else to give a prize, a beautiful award, and if you are not lucky, well, your practices will be an example for others, will inspire others, and will become a source of learning. So do look into it, our webpage, apply, run, and win.
Okay, with that, I would like to thank for the excellent discussion to all the high-level panelists here. I think we had a very rich debate on different aspects of affordability, electrification, but also public acceptance at the different stages of what we are doing and targeting measures. With that, a big applause to all the panelists. You can sit, you can sit. I will give now a very short conclusion because lunch is waiting outside. I think with today's, but also yesterday's debate, we had a very, very rich and engaging discussion on our grid package, but also the future of the energy system in the current context, which already the Commissioner, but others also described as at least extremely challenging. We don't know how long the Strait of Hormuz will be de facto blocked. So we are looking at different scenarios, of course, IEA, IMF, but also us, depending on how long that is and how much it will impact the fossil fuel price, availability, security of supply, and also, at the end of the day, maybe also economy and growth, as we already see signs of it. So the discussion we had today, but also yesterday, on how to help accelerate, I think the acceleration of what we are doing already in the last years here in Europe, here in all our member states, has benefited a number of our citizens, of industry, but of the challenges are indeed ahead. We have energy-intensive industries, we have citizens, we have all ourselves, which we need to bring along on that journey of that clean energy transition. We have heard from the different players today, but also yesterday, how to do that. We have, I think, conclusions on our net, which will help the follow-up of that debate. We remain available, of course, for discussion concretely with the presidency now on the grids package and the parliament, but also then we need to implement. It's never done with this year's negotiation, but the implementation. And the implementation, coming back to the grids package and the necessity to build out both electricity, hydrogen grids, which is the focus of that package, we need to do it together. We can start already now. And we had heard also today with our efforts and the efforts of the agency, there are very good projects. There are projects of common interest. There are projects of mutual interest. We highlighted a few today, but there are many, many more. So I would say it was a very, very enriching 12th Infrastructure Forum. We will do it next year again. As it was said, the infrastructure and the networks remain top of our agenda point. We need the investments, we need the engagement, we need public acceptance all along. So we will hopefully with the Danish presidency, and many, many thanks again to our colleagues in the Danish Ministry for allowing us to continue that debate, for organizing it with us and hosting us here in beautiful Copenhagen. And also thank to my team, Joachim and team who is here, and Dovi and others who had been extremely engaged in making it happen to all of us. With that, we have now a light lunch served outside, so you can continue a little bit the discussion over lunch, and then hopefully for all of us, a nice long Pentacosta weekend starting soon. So many thanks for coming, many thanks to the panel today, but also to all who helped the discussion yesterday, and looking forward to continue that discussion and seeing you around. Thank you.